I was 10 years old when my story takes place. My parents took me up to my aunt and uncle's place in the mountains for a nice long weekend. It's this old cabin tucked into a strand of pine trees, miles and miles from any kind of town. The roads out there are gravel, the nights are blackout. If you stood out on that porch after dark, you couldn't see much beyond the first line of the trees. My best friend Tyler came with us, and at the time it sounded awesome. 2 kids, a mountain cabin, a bunch of cousins and no school. Yeah, perfect. It stopped being awesome though the night all the adults went out to dinner. There were probably 8 or 9 of us at the cabin altogether. Most of my cousins were older teenagers at the time. Around sunset, the adults piled into a couple of vehicles and headed into town for dinner, leaving Tyler and me behind with this strict instruction not to answer the door and do not leave the house. Neither of us cared. We already had soda, snacks, and cable television. And for about an hour, that night was perfect. We loved being there by ourselves. And then out of nowhere, we start hearing screaming. Faint at first, a single scream from somewhere out in the darkness. Tyler muted the television. We both kind of looked toward the windows. What was that? I shrugged. Coyote maybe? A few minutes later, we hear it again, this time longer, higher pitched. Maybe human. At least it sounded like it. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. Tyler looked at me. Dude, that's not an animal. I didn't answer him because I still wasn't sure. Then it came again, much closer, a horrible shrieking sound that rose and fell like somebody being hurt. We ran to the kitchen and grabbed the house phone. I called the restaurant and an employee answered, so I asked for my dad by name. He came to the phone a minute or so later. Dad, there's somebody screaming outside the cabin. I could hear laughter in the background of the restaurant.
It's probably just an animal, son.
No, it sounds like a person, a real person.
We'll be home in a bit. Just lock the doors and turn on the floodlights.
He hung up and that was that. Now I'll admit my family was kind of loose when it comes to stuff like this. Everything was always nothing. Things can wait till later. Danger was never even close to any of their minds. We checked every lock in the cabin and then sat back down. 5 minutes later, that same screaming would return. This time it was accompanied by a loud grinding noise. The sound would echo through the woods immediately after the scream. Tyler jumped off the couch. All right, dude, what is this? What is going on? What's that noise? I don't know, man. I don't know. Well, this is freaking me out. The grinding stopped, but the screaming kept up. Something slammed outside, a heavy metal crash. Beyond that, I couldn't place any of the sounds. We ran to the front window and there was nothing, just darkness. The porch light illuminated a small patch of gravel and pine needles. Everything beyond that was just black. Another crash erupted from somewhere near the road. A large bang, and then more of that grinding noise. I grabbed the phone and called the restaurant again, and this time my mom answered. Mom, we're hearing screaming and there's some kind of machine now too.
Son, we're eating dinner.
Mom, I'm serious.
So am I.
Then the line went dead. Tyler looked like he was about to cry. Honestly, I wasn't far behind him. The next hour, those noises continued, sometimes close, sometimes further away. Every few minutes, we'd run to a different window trying to at least see something, anything. At one point, I saw movement near the mailbox, a figure maybe, but it vanished before I could actually get a good look. The smell would come next, smoke, gasoline, and Tyler smelled it first. All right, dude, what the fuck is going on? I froze. The cabin suddenly smelled like campfire. We sprinted to the front window and an orange light flickered through the trees. It wasn't much of the time, but the flames were growing constantly. Something was now burning near the road. I called the restaurant a third time and this time nobody answered. I called again, nothing. Again, nothing. Eventually I finally get somebody to pick up and I barely get 2 sentences out before they told me to stop calling. My parents had told the employees not to answer our phone number. I remember just standing there, holding the receiver after the line went dead. I was furious and terrified at the same time because whatever is happening outside is not an animal. I think around 10 o'clock the noises finally came to an end. The screaming stopped, the buzzing stopped, everything went totally quiet. Neither Tyler nor I slept much because every creak in the cabin sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like somebody trying a door. At one point, I really thought I heard somebody walking across the porch, but neither of us had any kind of courage to go look. We stayed hidden in our sleeping bags until morning. When I woke up, the sunlight was pouring through the windows, and for a second I thought maybe we imagined everything last night. I walked downstairs and every adult was gathered around the kitchen table and nobody was talking. The mood felt accusatory immediately. My aunt looked exhausted, my uncle looked furious. My cousin was crying, crying, weeping. "What happened?" I asked. Everybody looked, but nobody answered right away. Eventually, my uncle stood up, walked to the window, and pointed outside. "Look." I stepped onto the porch and my stomach dropped. The yard looked like a war zone. The mailbox was gone. Splintered pieces were scattered across the ditch. Several trees had deep chainsaw cuts into them. A couple had fallen across the road. The side of my uncle's car looked like somebody had attacked it with an axe. The doors were shredded. The windshield was cracked. Near the road sat this large black burn mark where somebody had piled brush and set it on fire. The scorch mark in grass was still visible. And then I noticed something on the porch. A random pile of dead rodents, squirrels and the like, maybe a dozen of them. All of it read like a message, and I backed away immediately. "What happened?" My uncle's face hardened, and then, shockingly, one of my cousins answered. "My ex-boyfriend." Apparently, the guy had shown up thinking nobody was home. He brought a chainsaw, and when he realized people were still there, at least me and my cousin, he lost his mind. Neighbors later reported that they heard the screaming, the revving the chainsaw, cutting trees, destroying property, setting fires along the road. He got cold feet about the whole thing, though. But the most horrifying part would come next. Our neighbor claimed he'd walked onto the porch several times. Apparently, he'd circled the cabin looking through the windows, looking for people, looking for my cousin. That whole time, we were listening to a violent lunatic tearing apart the property while we sat trapped inside. He could have set the house on fire and we would have been none the wiser. That whining was a small chainsaw that he was using on heavy wood and plastics, even some light metals. If he randomly decided to break a window, we would have been completely alone. There was no cell phones, we had no adults there, nobody to help. Just two terrified kids in a cabin deep in the mountains. The guy was arrested eventually, and I don't remember what happened to him after that, but he and my cousin stopped dating at least. Thank God. My brother and I have computers set up in this converted attic room at the top of the house. Years ago, it belonged to my older sister, but after she graduated and moved out, the bedroom would become ours. She hated sleeping up there. Anytime somebody asked her why, she'd just shrug and say the room was haunted. I didn't believe her, but the room, I will admit, does feel weird sometimes. One night I'm sitting at my computer clicking through a game, and I get that strange feeling again. The one that makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I glance over my shoulder and, of course, nobody, just my brother still at his desk. I turn back to my screen to go back to my game. I hear footsteps now, pounding up the staircase. Thump, 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 thump. Somebody running. I stop what I'm doing and look toward the staircase door. The footsteps reach the top and then no more noises, no more thumping. The door doesn't open, nobody knocks, it's just silence. "Hey, did you hear that?" I ask my brother, and he doesn't even look up. "Yep, I did." "You gonna check it?" "No." I laugh. The weird thing is neither of us wants to go because neither of us are bothered. It happens often enough that we just kind of stop talking about it. I guess maybe that was what my sister was talking about the whole time. Some settling walls and floorboards, right? That's all it is. Even though it definitely sounds like somebody is climbing the stairs. Sometimes it'll even feel like somebody's standing right behind your chair. You get this prickly feeling on the back of your neck like somebody is directly staring at you. You learn to just ignore it. A little while later, my mom appears in the doorway. "I'm gonna run to the store for cigarettes." "All right," I say back. My brother waves without looking away from his monitor, and Mom disappears downstairs. A few seconds later, We hear the garage door rattle and open up beneath us. We hear a car start up and the engine backs out. The garage door closes a minute later and the sound fades down the street. Routine sounds inside our childhood home. My brother slowly turns toward me and says, "Home Alone." I grin back. Finally. The second she's gone, we crank up the music. The speakers are terrible, but they're loud enough to shake the room. My brother starts drumming on the desk with a pencil while I mess around on the computer. For maybe 3 seconds, everything was pretty normal, and then we hear this jingling sound. I freeze, and I guess my brother did too. The sound was coming from the stairwell door. The metal plate on the doorknob has been loose for years. Whenever somebody opens up that door, it rattles, and I'd recognize that sound anywhere. It was a jingle and then a click. The door just swings wide open, and I stare at it. The opening beyond is dark from at least where I'm sitting. Then a voice drifts up the stairs. My mom's voice, clear as day. "Y'all turn that music down." Every muscle in my body locks up. My brother slowly turns to me, and I can tell by his pale face that he heard exactly what I just did. The garage door, the car, her leaving, all of it. Nobody says anything for several seconds. The music just keeps playing. Mom?" I finally managed to say. Nothing. The voice doesn't answer. The music is suffocating. I try to stand up and get some air. "Mom!" Silence. Not a footstep. No movement. Nothing. My brother stands up too, his shirt now sticking to him with sweat. "Don't." I look at him. "Don't what?" "Don't go down there." I try to laugh, but my head is spinning. Am I crazy? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. I do. Mom isn't here. I heard her leave. Still, I end up walking toward the door. The closer I get, the more convinced I become that there's some kind of normal explanation for all of this. Maybe she forgot a purse or a lighter. Either way, I reach the stairwell and there's just darkness leading downstairs. "Mom!" I call one more time. No answer, so I start down. The steps creak beneath my feet and it freaks me the fuck out. Halfway down, I can already see part of the garage. It's empty, but I keep going. No car, no sign of my mom. I walk to the garage window and look outside. The driveway is empty now too. She's gone and we are home alone. I move through the house, checking every single room, the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, all the bedrooms. Everything's empty. The house is dead silent despite somebody just speaking to us moments before. When I finally head back upstairs, my brother is standing right where I left him. His question is obvious. "Well?" I shake my head at him. "She's not here." How the hell is that possible? Dude, I don't know. The music continued playing over our conversation. Nobody wanted to walk over and turn it off. It's annoying, but it also feels like this weird kind of barrier, something to block out any more voices. The rest of the afternoon is pretty miserable. We stay upstairs because we're terrified and neither of us can relax at all. Every little noise immediately gets our attention, and when my mom finally gets home, we practically run downstairs to meet her. The first thing I ask is, "Did you come back after you left?" She looks confused. "What? Did you come back here after going to the store?" "No." "At all?" "No." "You didn't yell upstairs for us to turn down the music." The smile disappears from her face. "What are you talking about?" So I tell her everything, every detail, and she stares bullets at me the entire time. She looks at my brother, and something weird streaks across her face during it too. "Did you hear it too?" she asked him. "Yeah, it sounded exactly like you." My mom folds her arms and fear returns back to her face. She says quietly, "Boys, I never came back." Nobody speaks. What bothers me most isn't really what my brother and I heard, it's my mom's reaction. She looked genuinely disturbed. Not totally caught off guard, if that makes sense. like she's already suspecting something about that room itself. Years later, I would ask my sister about it, so she said she isn't surprised at all, and I tell her about hearing Mom's voice and she just nods at me. Then she says something that sent chills immediately straight through me. "That's why I never slept up there, dude." I stare at her. "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" She shrugs. "Sometimes I'd hear Mom calling my name from the stairs." I wait for her to continue, but she doesn't. Finally, I ask, "When Mom wasn't home?" And my sister nods. We don't know what we were hearing, but something had been perfecting our mother's voice for years, and it obviously practiced it on my sister before it got to me. This happened before cell phones, back when being home alone actually meant being alone. If something went wrong, you had the house phone, maybe a neighbor if they were awake, and that was really it. I was 16 or 17 and my parents had gone out for the evening. The house was quiet except for the television playing in the living room. It was one of those ordinary weekends that blur together after enough years pass. Forgettable, I guess, is what I'll call it. I finished a snack in the kitchen, turned off the lights room by room, and got ready for bed. Before heading upstairs, I let our golden retriever Buddy outside for his final bathroom break of the evening. Now, Buddy was the friendliest dog I've ever known. He loved everybody. Neighbors, delivery drivers, even strangers walking down our street. It didn't matter. He'd greet them all with a wagging tail and a goofy grin. In all the years we had him, I never once even heard him growl. Not at people, not at animals, not even when another dog would steal his food. There wasn't a single aggressive bone inside this dog's body, no killer instinct whatsoever. So I let him outside and he trotted down the back porch per usual. Then, out of nowhere, he suddenly stops and I heard a low rumble. At first, I initially thought that another dog had wandered into our yard or something. I quickly would realize the sound was actually coming from Buddy. He stood completely rigid, staring toward the bushes that lined up in the back fence. His hackles were raised, his head was low. I've never seen him like this before. "Buddy," I called out. He didn't respond or react. The growl actually deepened. I stepped to the edge of the porch and looked off into the darkness. The bushes shifted slightly in the wind, but I couldn't see anything unusual. But then after that, Buddy explodes. He lunges forward, barking aggressively, complete and total pure alarm. It wasn't a normal bark either. It sounded really aggressive, like he was trying to keep something away from our house. My stomach immediately tightened up. Maybe it was a raccoon, a stray cat, but that didn't really make sense. Buddy loves cats. He probably wouldn't have invited a burglar inside if one offered him a treat. I'm being totally serious too. The more I stared at those bushes, the more convinced I'd become that somebody was hiding there. The neighborhood was quiet, no passing cars, no other neighbors outside, just Buddy standing guard at the edge of the yard. "Come here, Buddy," I yelled, but he ignored me. I called again, getting the same reaction. For several more minutes, I stood there on the porch trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. The logical part of my brain kept insisting there was probably an animal in those bushes. The other part kept imagining somebody crouched back there watching the house. I looked toward the neighboring yards, hoping to see a porch light click on or maybe somebody taking out the trash, but there was nothing, nobody. Every house around looked like they were already asleep. Meanwhile, Buddy refused to back down. He would bark furiously, stop for a second and listen, and then start growling again. Whatever this was had his full attention, and it didn't seem to be moving much or leaving. Finally, I go back inside and grab the biggest kitchen knife that we owned. Looking back, it was kind of ridiculous, but at the time it felt better than walking into the dark completely empty-handed. When I stepped back onto the porch, Buddy was still there, barking nonstop. I tried calling him once more and still nothing. Then he turned his head and barked directly at me. It wasn't threatening, if that makes sense. If anything, it felt like a warning, like he was telling me to go inside. Looking back now, I should have listened. Instead, I started down those steps. Buddy paced back and forth between me and the bushes, barking and growling. My heart was hammering so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I gripped that knife tightly in my hand. The yard suddenly felt larger than it ever had before, too. Every step I took seemed to be louder than I wanted it to be, and I kept expecting something to burst out of the darkness. As I got closer, I started hearing this faint rustling sound. Plastic. That was all it was. Plastic moving in the wind. And I felt really stupid in the moment. A grocery bag had snagged on one of the branches, was fluttering softly in the darkness. Relief hit me so hard that I almost laughed. There was nobody hiding in the bushes. Buddy was just being an idiot. "Oh my God," I muttered. "Buddy, seriously? It's a plastic bag, man." I stood there for a second or two shaking my head. The whole thing was ridiculous. Here I am standing in the backyard with a kitchen knife because my dog had declared war on litter. But Buddy kept growling. I took another step and the bag lifted. Not from the wind, it rose straight upward. Every bit of relief that was there had now vanished completely. The top of the bag cleared the bushes, then I saw fingers gripping it. And for a second my brain refused to process what I was actually looking at. A hand appeared, then an arm. Then a man slowly stood up from behind the hedge. He'd been shrouded in leaves and shadows. I don't know how long he'd been crouched there for, 5, 10 minutes, an hour? Who knows? All I did know was that he'd been hiding a few feet from my back porch while I was alone inside that house the whole time. He had a black hoodie, black pants. I couldn't make out his face in the darkness. He simply just stood there, holding that stupid grocery bag while Buddy barked like he'd lost his mind. The man looked directly at me and nobody moved. I was frozen. Then Buddy charged the fence, teeth bared. The man sprang into motion. He climbed over the fence in this smooth movement and dropped into the alley behind our property. I backed away so fast I nearly fell onto the porch steps. Buddy was there still, throwing himself against the fence, barking harder than I've ever heard. I watched through the gaps in the fence and the man didn't run. And I guess that really was the creepiest part. He just kind of walked away. He definitely knew the area. Getting caught didn't seem to bother him at all. Halfway down the alley, he glanced back once over his shoulder and I still couldn't see his face. He continued walking until the darkness just swallowed him up. Eventually, I grabbed Buddy by the collar and dragged him inside. The second the door slammed shut, I locked it and every single window in the house and called my parents. The police would come later and search the yard and they'd find footprints behind the bushes and signs that somebody had indeed climbed the fence, but they never identified who it was or why he'd been there. Nobody in the other neighborhoods had reported seeing anybody. Nobody knew who he was either. For years after this, people laughed when I told them the story because it starts with a golden retriever growling at a grocery bag. I've never laughed because Buddy was not growling at the bag. He was growling at the man that was holding it. I don't remember exactly how old I was when this happened, 5, maybe 6. Back then, whenever my dad came home, he had his own little ritual. Before he even walked through the door, he'd shake his keys. It was never anything musical, just the jingle of a key ring coming through the house. And that sound meant that Dad was home. The second I heard it, I'd run and hide. Usually I'd squeeze between my mom's legs while she was cooking or folding laundry. Then my dad would come inside pretending he couldn't find me. "Where's my kid?" is what he called it. I'd be giggling so hard I'd practically give away my hiding spot. It happened so often that hearing keys almost became automatic for me. That sound meant safety. It meant Dad. The day all this took place, my mom and I were at my grandmother's house. Now, I don't really know why, but my grandmother's place always felt just like strange to me, even as a kid. One of those houses that seemed like it had some kind of history. The rooms were cluttered, the hallways felt narrow. Every sound would carry from one end to the other. A lot of my family lived in that house at different times, including my uncle. I think it was around 10 in the morning, and I know that because my dad wasn't supposed to get home until noon. My mom was downstairs doing something in the kitchen while I played nearby. Then I heard it, the keys, clear as day, exactly the way my dad always did it. I jumped up and immediately said, "Dad's home." My mom looked over at me. "What?" "Dad's home. She laughed. "No, baby, he's not home yet." "Yes, he is." "How do you know?" "I can hear him shaking his keys upstairs." I remember the look that she gave me. It wasn't scared, but confused. She wiped her hands off and followed me toward the staircase. I was excited. I thought my dad had gotten off work early. We climbed up the stairs together, and the second we reached the top landing, the sound stopped. It was just silence. I stood there waiting, but there was nothing more. A few seconds later, we hear keys again, but it's downstairs. The exact same sound. I pointed immediately and told my mom, "Dad's downstairs now." My mom's expression had now changed. I don't remember her being frightened just yet, but she was definitely not smiling anymore. We walked back downstairs, and the sound continued, slow and steady, like somebody standing in one spot casually, shaking a ring of keys. I followed it through the house, and my mom followed, and that sound led us toward the bathroom. The door was closed, and I pointed at it. "He's in there." The keys stopped, and my mom froze. Even as a little kid, it freaked me out. One second she's walking, the next second she's just stopped completely. I looked up at her. She was staring at the bathroom door, neither of us saying anything. We stood there for a while before she finally ushered me back toward the living room. Years later, when I brought that story up, she told me something that I'd never known. She said that as she reached for the doorknob, she got chills across her entire body, not normal chills or goosebumps. She described it as the darkest feeling she's ever experienced, like every instinct inside of her was screaming to not open up that door, that if she did, her and I would have been devoured by whatever was making that jingling sound. So in the moment, she didn't open it. She grabbed me and led me outside. We sat on the porch and waited for my dad to get home, my actual dad, the real one, 2 hours later. When he finally arrived, shaking his keys exactly the way he always did, my mom almost starts crying. And at the time, I'm so young, I don't understand any of this. To me, it was just a weird day. As I got older, I convinced myself that I imagined all of it. Kids make things up, memories get mixed together, dreams become stories, and vice versa. By the time I reached my adulthood, I had written most of it off entirely. Then one day, I ended up mentioning it to my mom. I expect her to laugh and tell me I was just dreaming or something to that effect, but she immediately knew exactly what I was talking about, and before I could even finish my story, she was already nodding. "Oh yeah, that actually happened." That's when she disclosed all those extra details, the feeling of doom, the crying. A knot formed in my stomach, and suddenly it wasn't just a childhood memory. It was real, something that we shared between us. She also reminded me of something else that happened in my grandma's house, something I'd forgotten about completely. The funny thing is that me and my grandma both hated the dark, so we'd leave a light on somewhere and talk until we both fell asleep. One night we were both asleep when my uncle came charging up the stairs, not walking, but running full tilt to the house. The sound woke everybody up, and he burst through my grandma's bedroom door and loomed over us. I sat up in bed where he stood, and I don't remember what happened next because my parents rushed in and quickly took me out of the room. The details would come later. According to my mom, my uncle couldn't talk. Literally couldn't talk. He stood there pointing toward my grandma's bathroom, eyes wide with terror. His face was pale, and every time somebody asked what's wrong, he just kept pointing. For nearly 2 hours, he was like this. Eventually, my father opened up the bathroom door and looked in and saw nobody there. My grandma eventually began praying over him, and slowly but surely he calmed down. Eventually he could speak again, but never fully explained what happened. Not then, not ever. And to this day, if the subject gets brought up, he shuts down immediately. According to my family, he's refused for decades to say what he saw in that bathroom. He only says the same thing, that he saw something, but never wants to talk about it. My grandma thinks that he chased something through the house and it went up into the bathroom. I personally don't know what happened in that house. Maybe there's some kind of logical explanations for all this. Maybe I was just a kid with a very active imagination. Maybe my uncle experienced some kind of paranoia or panic attack, who knows. Maybe my mom's memory has changed over time just like mine has. I don't know. But what I do know is that I do remember hearing those keys. I remember following those sounds through the house. I remember pointing at a closed bathroom door, and I remember my mom stopping dead in her tracks and refusing to open it up. More than 20 years later, she still says it was the worst feeling she's ever had. It wasn't fear nor anxiety, something else that she couldn't explain. And every time I think about it, I find myself wondering the same thing. If my mom had actually opened up that bathroom door that morning, what the hell would have been standing on the other side? When I was 5, my mom told us David was dead, and that was that. He was my sister's dad, not mine. And even before he vanished, he was more of a rumor than an actual person. He'd gone abroad years and years earlier, got into some kind of accident, and nobody heard from him again. No phone calls, no letters, no nothing. Eventually, word would spread that he had died, and everybody just kind of accepted it. I did too. So when I was 9 or 10, home alone one afternoon, I nearly fell over when I opened up the door and see him standing there. The knock itself was even strange. It was slow and just really weird. Not like somebody visiting, more like somebody trying to remember how knocking worked. I looked through the frosted glass and saw a man's silhouette standing very close to the door. Against my better judgment, I opened it. He looked awful. His hair was greasy and overgrown. Stubble covered most of his face. His clothes hung off him, but it was his eyes that really bothered me. They weren't vacant exactly. They were focused somewhere beyond me, as though he was looking through the house instead of at it. "Is your mom in?" he asked. The voice was rough, slow. I recognized immediately from all the old photographs. "David?" I asked, and he blinked. "I brought the house," he said. I have no idea what that meant. His eyes just drifted past me toward the hallway and the staircase. Then he smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Is she 12? he asked. My sister's 12th birthday was a week ago, but this cold feeling would wash through me. He leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Don't let the clock talk." Then I ran. My mom worked across the road, and I burst through the door of her workplace almost in tears. "David's at the house." She frowned, looking at me. "What?" "David's at the front door." For a second, she looked annoyed. "No," she said. "David's dead." I shook my head at her. "No, Mom, he's there." Something in my face and demeanor must have convinced her, because she immediately stood up and followed me outside. We hurried across the road together, and there was David, still standing there. He hadn't moved. He was facing the frosted glass of the front door, head tilted as though he was listening to something inside. My mom stopped cold. "David?" He turned around, and the look on his face changed several times in just a few seconds. Recognition, confusion, happiness, and back to nothing. "Mary?" is what he said, but that wasn't my mom's name. She ended up bringing him inside anyway, and looking back now, that's probably not what would have happened today. Somebody would have called an ambulance or social services. Back then, people just kind of dealt with things. David sat at our kitchen table while my mom made tea and tried to figure out what had happened to him. Getting answers from him was seemingly impossible. Sometimes he knew my sister's name, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he just stared at the wall for several minutes without even speaking. The only thing that ever made sense was when he tapped the side of his head and said, "The car went sideways." And that was it. Later, we learned he'd been in a serious car accident abroad and suffered a traumatic brain injury, but nobody knew how severe it was. Nobody knew who had looked after him. Nobody even knew how he'd gotten home. When my sister arrived later that day, he stared at her for a really long time, until she became uncomfortable. "You've gotten big," he said. Then, a few minutes later, he asked who she was. That night, he slept in our sitting room. None of us really slept particularly well, knowing he was under the same roof, and I remember hearing him pacing downstairs long after everybody had gone to bed. Slow footsteps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The next morning, strange things kept turning up. Our wall clock had disappeared. Random. After searching the house, we found it carefully wrapped in towels and hidden away in a cupboard. Nobody knew why. On our kitchen table sat this brass eagle ornament and a card that read, "Welcome to your new home." It was addressed to my sister. We'd lived in that same house for years now. At the time, none of it made sense, but later we wondered if some damaged part of his mind knew her birthday was approaching and he was trying to do something kind. Maybe he remembered she existed but couldn't remember why. Maybe he knew he needed to be somewhere but couldn't remember where. Whatever was happening inside his head, it was heartbreaking and unsettling at the same time. The next morning, he left. Nobody saw him go. My mom was in the kitchen when she looked outside and he was already halfway down the road and he never even looked back. We never saw David again either. More than 20 years have passed now since that single night. I guess a few years ago, my mom ran into David's sister while shopping and she mentioned his visit to our house, and his sister casually told her that they experienced something very similar. Apparently, he'd appeared at their place around the same time, confused and disoriented, then quickly vanished again. And that was the last time anybody's heard from him or of him. I've searched online for him over the years, but there's not really anything there. No trace and no answers. I guess the strangest part to me is that he didn't really feel dangerous. He felt more lost. Completely just hopelessly lost. Like a man wandering through fragments of memories that no longer connected properly. Looking back, I suspect the news of his accident somehow became distorted through word of mouth until people believed that he actually died. Without identification and unable to explain who he was, he may have slipped through the cracks entirely. I still think about him sometimes, about the knock on the door, the way he stood outside listening to the house, about him asking if my sister was 12, and about the clock. Parts of me know what I experienced that day, and it's still totally surreal. But there's another part of me that can't help but wonder if I didn't open up that door to a ghost that odd afternoon.
I took the summer job at Blackwater Midway because I was desperate for money. The amusement park sat outside St. Louis, near a dead stretch of highway surrounded by empty fields and run-down gas stations. Even during the daytime, the place felt depressing. Half the rides were permanently closed, faded banners peeled off rusted poles, and most of the employees acted like they hated showing up. I worked at a small snack stand near the very back of the park beside an old spinning ride called the Cyclone. The thing looked ancient. Its yellow paint had faded almost white in places, and the entire structure groaned whenever it operated. Older workers joked that one day the ride was going to kill somebody. The scary part was how serious they sounded when they said it. That Thursday night, a storm rolled in around 6 in the evening. Rain hammered the Midway so hard the pavement flooded in places, and families cleared out quickly once lightning started flashing over the park. By 7:30, almost every ride had been shut down early. At first, I overheard from other coworkers that there had been a minor injury due to some malfunctioning of a certain ride. But after 30 minutes, when the cops showed up and sealed the area with security tape, I knew something serious had happened. Most of the employees clocked out and left, but I was told to stay, clean up, and wait for a supervisor to escort me out, since the park didn't want hourly workers wandering alone near the accident scene. The farther back you went, the quieter everything became, until all you could hear was rain hitting metal rooftops and rides creaking in the wind. There's something deeply wrong about an empty amusement park at night. Without crowds and music, the place doesn't feel fun anymore. It just feels abandoned. The storm weakened into a drizzle. I was inside the snack stand scraping grease off the grill when I noticed someone standing outside the service window. The sight startled me because I hadn't heard anyone approach. The man stood completely motionless beneath the yellow lights, wearing a soap gray hoodie with the hood partially covering his face. Water dripped steadily from his sleeves onto the pavement. Then I noticed the blood across his hoodie, smeared across his chest and stomach. The stains looked dark and heavy even beneath the rain. I froze, thinking he'd been stabbed or caught in the accident. I stepped closer and asked if he needed help or if I should call security. When he looked up at me, I saw how pale his face was, almost gray under the lights. He quietly asked why everyone was pretending not to see him. At first I assumed he was in shock, but something about the way he spoke, so calm, so serious, unnerved me. I stayed behind the snack stand counter, keeping my distance, but the metallic smell of blood was strong. When I asked what happened, the man slowly turned toward the cyclone. Rainwater dripped from the rusted bars while the wind made the ride groan softly. He explained that the ride malfunctioned earlier and trapped him after workers shut everything down. According to him, he screamed for help while employees evacuated, but nobody came back. Every instinct told me something was wrong. My stand was isolated, and security rarely checked this section unless called. I kept imagining him pulling a weapon or trying to force his way inside. Then he asked if I could hear something. At first, only the rain. Then, a metallic clang echoed at a close distance. A few seconds later, another clang, like someone banging on metal from underneath the ride. The man stared toward the ride that was sealed and quietly said that's what he'd heard while trapped. Panic started to creep in. I hurried to the radio and called security, reporting that an injured man was standing outside the snack stand, covered in blood. The dispatcher went silent for several seconds before another voice came on, asking me to describe the man again. When I mentioned the blood around his stomach, the radio abruptly clicked off. Confused and nervous, I glanced outside. The man was gone. My stomach dropped. There was no place he could have disappeared to so quickly, especially with the entire area taped off. Then, another metallic clang echoed from inside the cyclone, much louder this time. Despite every instinct telling me not to, I grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the ride, careful to stay in sight of the nearest security camera. Rainwater dripped from the rusted structure, and the platform creaked beneath my shoes. The banging continued somewhere underneath the machinery. I climbed onto the operator platform and shone my light through the metal grating. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing. The beam settled on a crushed human hand, pinned beneath part of the ride. It looked swollen and gray, but I could see a silver ring on one finger, glinting in the light. The fingers twitched slightly, though later I would tell myself it was just the rain. Suddenly, footsteps splashed through puddles behind me. 3 security guards appeared, looking pale and tense. One immediately pulled me from the platform while the others shouted into radios. I tried to explain, but they cut me off. Finally, one older guard said there'd been an accident earlier. A guest had fallen beneath the ride during an emergency stop and was trapped. Management had shut down the area and was waiting for emergency crews, but hadn't told the whole staff to avoid panic. The description of the guest matched exactly with the man. I couldn't speak or move. They had to drag me away. I glanced back toward the midway. For one horrible second, I saw the man again, standing perfectly still beneath the flickering lights in his soaked gray hoodie, watching us silently. I blinked, and he was gone. That night, I couldn't help but think about the question he asked me. It's horrifying and tragic when I think about how the poor man's spirit was trapped there, not being able to decipher that he was dead. The reason no one could see or hear him was because not everyone can see dead people. I never stayed after close again. I stayed there for a year more and never saw that man again. But to this day, whenever I'm outside, probably returning home from work or a diner, I scan my surroundings with a heavy heart. And when I notice a street lamp on the sidewalk, I get a flashback of him standing under it, dripping with rainwater and blood, caught in the loop, whether he's alive or dead. When I took my 7-year-old daughter Emily to the Ashbury Fun Park, I had no idea it would be the scariest day of my life. The rabbit mascot was the first thing that caught my eye when we entered the amusement park. To keep the kids entertained, Most of the mascots at county fairs acted very hyperbolically. For comic effect, they twirled and waved at passers-by and even pretended to trip and fall, but this particular one remained motionless, its large gray head slightly cocked to one side, as it peered through the onlookers, as if it were searching for a particular individual. I gave it very little consideration when it happened. In any case, Emily saw it too, as she eagerly gestured toward the middle. She tugged on my sleeve and licked powdered sugar from her fingertips. The bunny beckoned to her with a slow-moving hand gesture. I could see the gap where she had recently lost one front tooth as she smiled so broadly and waved back. Seeing that smile made the whole journey worthwhile. She had a tough last year. Things between us were tense in ways I couldn't understand or resolve. Even after the custody agreement was completed and the divorce had dragged on for months, in my presence, she had grown more reserved. But as the day progressed, I could see my cheerful little butterfly being herself again. The bumper cars made her laugh. I despise heights, but she insisted I go on the big swings anyhow. After the employee allowed her to try the impossible shot 3 times in a row, she won a plush blue dolphin from a basketball game, which she proudly displayed. Things seemed to be running smoothly for a time. After that, the rabbit began to appear everywhere we went. It appeared to be a coincidence at first. However, I began to feel annoyance after the 4th or 5th occurrence. It seemed to be staring at us every time I caught sight of it. While Emily and I were having fries at a picnic table, I once saw it standing behind a food truck. On a separate occasion, as we emerged from a mirror maze, I found it close to the funhouse's entrance. It never talked to us, but I could feel unease all over my body whenever I saw him. Strangest of all, it appeared as though no one else had noticed. I attempted to ignore the sensation that was beginning to build up in my chest. Because there are so many reports of kidnappings and predators on the internet, I rationalized my fear by telling myself I was being paranoid. Actually, ever since I became a dad, my brain has been hardwired to always be on the lookout for danger. Nonetheless, the rabbit gave off an unsettling vibe. Emily wanted to take some pictures of the Ferris wheel, so I told her to sit by the bench that felt like a good spot with the Ferris wheel in the background. I was using a Polaroid, so the photos came out fast. I felt a knot in my gut when the printed images slipped out a few moments later. The rabbit mascot was also in the photographs. He was standing at a distance right next to the Ferris wheel. In that moment, I knew there was something very wrong with whoever was underneath that rabbit costume. I tucked the photo into my pocket after folding it. I was trying not to act out of character over something trivial that could have ruined the day. But ever since then, I'd been very conscious of my environment. I began to keep Emily close by my side. The vibe at the fairground shifted drastically as darkness descended. The park was getting crowded, and everyone was waiting for the fireworks show. To help Emily see through the ocean of heads, I lifted her on my shoulders. I vividly recall clinging to her legs as the sky above broke into a kaleidoscope of red and gold fireworks. I was finally enjoying the moment when my daughter asked me a question that drained the color from my face. She wanted to know if bunnies could find out people's addresses. She claimed the rabbit had approached her while I was picking up napkins from the food stall. I knew my instincts were right. So many questions flooded through my head. I forgot I was almost interrogating my little kid who barely understands danger out in the world, but I wanted to make sure how much Emily had shared with the guy. Within the next few minutes, I decided to leave for good with my daughter. I grabbed her hand and went straight to the main entrance. I began to feel more and more ashamed as we drew nearer. A part of me was aware that my question sounded completely absurd. I felt ridiculous to be upset about a mascot at a county fair, but I couldn't ignore the uneasy sensation in my stomach. I went to the mascot who was sitting at the help desk and inquired about this creepy rabbit mascot. As I took my time explaining everything, the clerk at the counter listened attentively. She looked different the second I brought up the rabbit, though. She paused for a second, and then told me the fair doesn't have a rabbit mascot. For a while, I thought she was new or something, so I waited for another park employee to arrive and asked him the same thing. They were unanimous in their assertion. That year's fair featured just a brown bear and a pirate as mascots. With trembling hands, I showed them the photograph. They looked worried and confused at the same time. The help desk lady immediately reported about the guy roaming the grounds, disguising himself as a mascot of the park. I didn't wait to see what happened to him. I got in the car with Emily and started for home. We stopped at the first red light, and suddenly Emily screamed, "Look, Dad, look, it's him again." Right in front of my eyes, the man in the bunny costume crossed the road. He stopped right in front of my car for a quick second and waved at us, before disappearing into the darkness of the sidewalk. I was so horrified, not realizing how he managed to follow us by foot. The lights changed to green, and a loud honk from behind pulled me back to reality. I didn't mention any of these events to my ex-wife because she would have freaked out, but that night, I slept with a knife under my pillow. I never got to find out who that was, or why he was following us all the time. Since then, I've never gone to that same amusement park with my daughter again. In 2014, I was fired from my job, despite having a good college degree and an impressive track record. They called it a misunderstanding and said my reaction was unprofessional, so they let me go. I couldn't argue. They held all the power. From one of New York's top law firms, I fell straight to the streets of Louisiana. I left behind everything familiar and relocated to a small suburb, taking a job at a local amusement park, a place that was part water park, part county fair. I worked at a tiny toy store beside the so-called warehouse. My job was to stack shelves and manage the souvenir counter with Ursula, who filled the slow hours with celebrity gossip. I was quiet, keeping my past hidden, content to let her chatter fill the silence. She respected my background and probably wondered how I ended up there, but she never asked. I was getting comfortable around Ursula, but I couldn't stand her brother Josh. He worked security at the park, hired soon after Ursula spent a mysterious night in the owner's office. Ursula, clever in her way, knew Josh was desperate for my attention. One afternoon, while I rang up a customer's toys, Josh lingered nearby. When the customer left, he asked how I was, then if I'd go out with him. I told him no and focused on my work. He brushed his hand over mine and whispered that it didn't have to be serious, just a few hours of fun. And if I wanted more, I could always call. His audacity stunned me. I kept calm, smiled, and told him I knew what kind of person he was, but never thought he could be this cheap. That day, I took an early break, blaming a headache. Josh disappeared for a few days, but Ursula's behavior never changed. As summer arrived, the park filled with families, children running wild, the air thick with fried food and excitement. I didn't particularly like it, but I was finally adjusting. One morning, the owner called a staff meeting. This year, he wanted a 24-hour carnival with night shifts, food stalls, and fireworks. The pressure was on, but that day, sales jumped 40% by afternoon. By 7 p.m., everyone gathered for fireworks and I finally got a break. I slipped away to the restroom. While I washed my face, Ursula entered, complaining that she'd gotten her period and left her bag in the warehouse. She asked if I could fetch it for her since she couldn't go herself. I agreed and she locked herself in a stall to wait for me. I headed for the warehouse, feeling the festive crowd fade into the distance behind me. Something twisted in my gut, warning me to turn back. But Ursula was waiting, and I told myself not to be paranoid. Inside, the warehouse felt bigger than ever. 30 shelves, the back door far away. I flicked on the lights and walked to the left, where Ursula said her bag would be. It wasn't there. As I moved to another row, I felt someone duck behind a shelf. "I can see you," I called. Josh stepped out, blocking my way. His breathing was heavy, eyes red from alcohol, an empty beer bottle clutched in his hand. He screamed at me, called me a witch, and lunged forward. I didn't flinch. My hand went to the steel hair stick in my butt. That's when I broke my silence, my real confession, the truth even Ursula didn't know. You see, I wasn't fired just because of a misunderstanding. On my last day at the law firm, my boss tried to force himself on me, and I stabbed him in the eye with this very hair stick. He didn't press charges because I kept secret recordings of his harassment, proof that he traded promotions for sexual favors. He wanted it all buried, so the company paid me a hefty sum for my silence. I wasn't poor. I worked at the amusement park because it's easier to hide in a crowd, to disappear among strangers. Blending in is safer than running. As Josh came closer, all those memories returned. He stared, surprised by my calm. He asked me why I didn't look scared of him. I smiled, readying the hairpin. Just then, Ursula burst in. She apologized. Her bag was at the store after all. She saw Josh, screamed at him, and told him to leave me alone. After that, Josh avoided me. Ursula acted like nothing happened. I know she has her suspicions about my past life, but she's smart enough not to mess with me. As for Josh, if he ever tries anything again, I'll make sure he gets what he deserves, just like my previous boss.
I don't usually tell this story outside of my immediate family, because every time I do, I feel like I'm back in that parking lot, watching headlights cut through the dark and wondering if I'm about to become a statistic. This happened in the fall of 2023. I was a junior at the University of Oregon, studying environmental science. Nothing special, just a guy trying to get through midterms. The trouble started with a flat tire. I was driving back from a study retreat near Crater Lake. It was just me and my friend Marcus, both of us exhausted and eager to get back to Eugene before midnight. The highway was empty, lined with nothing but fir trees and the occasional flicker of a distant farmhouse. Then, the steering wheel jerked. I pulled onto the shoulder and Marcus got out to confirm what we already knew. The rear driver's side tire was shredded. We'd borrowed Marcus's sister's car and the spare was missing. We were about 40 miles from the nearest town of any size, but my phone showed a small dot about 6 miles ahead, a gas station, a diner, and a motel called The Crossroads. The reviews were non-existent. The name itself felt like a warning, but it was getting cold and the wind had started to pick up. We decided to limp the car there on the flat. Bad decision number 1. We pulled into the Crossroads Motel at around 10:45 p.m. It was one of those single-story horseshoe-shaped buildings from the 1970s, with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a trapped insect. The parking lot was cracked asphalt, with weeds pushing through. There were maybe 12 rooms total, 4 cars in the lot. One of them was a white van with no windows. Another was a sedan with its trunk slightly ajar, like someone had left in a hurry. The office was a small glass box attached to the middle of the horseshoe. I went inside while Marcus stayed with the car. The man at the desk was in his 60s, with a stained white undershirt and the kind of tired eyes that said he'd seen too much and stopped caring. I paid cash for one night. He didn't ask for an ID. He just slid a key across the counter, an actual metal key, not a card, and pointed toward room 8. "Checkout's 10 a.m., he said. Then he added something strange. "Lock your doors and your windows." I asked him what he meant. He just shrugged and turned back to a small television playing static. Room 8 was at the far end of the horseshoe, which meant we had to walk past all the other rooms to get there. A low awning covered the outdoor corridor, and the lights were few and far between. Every third bulb was either dead or flickering. As we walked, our footsteps echoed off the concrete. We were almost at our door when Marcus elbowed me and wiggled his eyebrows at something to my left. I looked and spotted an elderly woman who appeared to be in her late 60s, standing in the doorway of room 5. She was leaning against the frame with her arms crossed, wearing a torn yellow tutu that sat wrong on her hips, like it had been pulled from a costume bin. Her face was caked in white paint, and her lips were done up in red that went way past her mouth, smeared nearly ear to ear. She was watching us with a crooked grin, flashing her yellowish dentures. I tried keeping my eyes forward, but Marcus chuckled. The smile dropped off her face instantly. She growled at us and asked if we were laughing at her. Ignoring her, I hurriedly grabbed Marcus by the arm and walked him straight to room 8. He was already trying to swallow his laughter. The moment the doors locked, he had it in hysterics. I told him that was the stupidest thing he could have done. He said he couldn't help it. The woman looked like a clown and said he was sorry. I rolled my eyes. We settled. The room was what you'd expect. There were 2 beds, a bolted-down TV, and curtains that didn't meet in the middle. The bathroom had a rust ring in the tub. Marcus pulled out his phone and started scrolling, while I sat on the far bed and tried calling a tow truck, but couldn't get through. Mostly all of them redirected me to the voicemail. Marcus flopped down and was quiet for a while. I kept looking up the internet for options. Around midnight, we heard sobbing in the hall. At first, I thought maybe it was my head messing up. I heard more attentively, and truly someone was hiccuping in between the fits as if they'd been crying for a long time. I blinked, and shadows shifted in the gap under our door. Someone was lingering right outside, close enough that I could hear breathing between the sobs. Marcus sat bolt upright. He whispered for me to turn off the lights and froze. We sat there in the dark, waiting. The noise finally cut out after maybe 10 minutes. Neither of us said a word. We stayed on edge for another hour before I finally passed out sometime after 1. I have no clue what time it was when Marcus started screaming. I shot up off the mattress, instantly awake. The room was mostly dark, but enough light squeezed through the curtains to make out a figure standing right between the beds. It was a stocky, completely bald man, wearing the exact same torn yellow tutu. His face was covered in white paint, and the red lipstick was smeared across his cheeks like a nightmare clown. On the floor between us was a blonde wig. Before I could blink, he launched, and both his hands were around Marcus's throat. My palms started shaking. I screamed, grabbed him by the shoulders, and pulled hard. He came off Marcus and stumbled back into the dresser. I put myself between them and told him I was calling the police right now if he didn't get up. He straightened up slowly, looked at me for a moment before he glared at Marcus. He said he'd find us again as he turned and walked out the door. We bolted the moment he was out of sight. Marcus drove the flat-tired car. I watched the rear view the whole way out of the lot. Neither of us ever went back. This happened last fall. I was coming back from a consulting job up near the Canadian border, a small manufacturing plant that wanted someone to audit their logistics. Boring work, decent money, and a 7-hour drive back to my apartment outside of Albany. I've done that drive 100 times. I knew the rest stops, the cheap gas stations, the stretches of highway where your phone loses signal for 20 minutes at a time. What I didn't know was that I'd be making an unplanned stop that night. It was around 11 p.m. when my dashboard lit up with a low tire pressure warning. Not a blowout, not a flat, just a slow leak. Enough that I knew I shouldn't ignore it. I was somewhere in the Adirondack region, which meant dense forest on both sides of the highway, no streetlights, and the kind of darkness that feels thick enough to press against your windshield. I took the next exit, which was less an exit and more a gravel ramp that curved into a 2-lane county road. My GPS showed a gas station about 4 miles ahead. What it didn't show was the motel. The gas station was closed. Pump still worked, card reader flickering, but the convenience store was dark and the air compressor was padlocked. I sat there for a minute, trying to decide if I could make it another 60 miles to the next town. That's when I saw the glow. A small sign, partially blocked by overgrown pines, that read, Pine Haven Motel, in faded green letters. The H was burned out. I figured I could at least pull into the lot, check the tire with my own gauge, and decide from there. The motel was shaped like a horseshoe, 12 rooms total, all ground level with doors facing a cracked asphalt lot. Only 2 lights worked in the entire parking lot, one above the office door, buzzing and flickering, and one at the far end near room 12, which cast a weak yellowish cone that barely reached 10 feet. There were 3 cars in the lot, a rusted sedan parked directly in front of the office, a pickup truck with a camper shell near the middle, and a dark SUV at the far end that I couldn't make a model of because it was too shadowed. I got out and checked my tire. Pressure was down but not critical. I could probably make it home if I babied it. But I was tired. Not the normal kind of tired. The kind where your vision starts to lag behind your head movements. I'd been driving for 6 hours already. So I made the call. I'd grab a room, sleep for a few hours, and leave at first light. The office was small. A counter, a bell, a rack of tourist brochures so old the paper had yellowed. Behind the counter sat a man. I'd guess he was in his late 60s. Thin gray hair combed over, wireframe glasses, a flannel shirt that looked like it had been washed too many times. He didn't get up when I walked in, just looked at me over the top of his glasses and said, "Need a room?" I said yes. He quoted me $40, cash. No card machine, apparently. I handed him 2 20s and he slid a key across the counter. An actual metal key with a plastic diamond-shaped tag. Room 9. He told me checkout was 10 a.m. sharp, no exceptions. Then he went back to reading his newspaper. No smile, no enjoy your stay. He just sort of waved me off, like I was wasting his time. Room 9 was 4 doors from the office. The carpet was a depressing brown, and the whole place reeked of old cigarette smoke and mildew. The bed had one of those super thin floral spreads that immediately makes you want to check for bed bugs. The bathroom was just a standard setup with a toilet, sink, and a shower with a curtain that was pretty gross with mold on the bottom. I brushed my teeth, threw the lock and the chain on the door, and then, because I listened to way too many true crime podcasts, I wedged the desk chair right under the handle. I killed the light and crashed, still fully dressed. About half an hour later, I woke up to a nasty screech, as if someone was dragging their fingernails across the window glass. I grabbed the lamp at my bedside, got up, pulled the curtain back an inch, and nearly pissed my pants. A guy was standing there, with his face practically glued to the glass. His breath was fogging it up. He was super pale, and his dark eyes were leering down at me. Before I could blink, he smacked his palms flat against the window and grinned. I clutched the lamp tighter. My heart started hammering in my chest as he raised one hand and waved. Then he gestured like he was heading for the front door and disappeared into the dark. 15 seconds later, loud knocks rattled the door frame. My blood ran cold. He started talking, telling me to open up. When I didn't move, he started pounding on the door, yelling that if I made him break in, he was going to get bloody ugly, and he'd rather keep things clean. I tried to play it cool and told him to get lost. He started spiraling about how I was hiding his pills, causing him pain, and that I was the reason his demons were asking him to kill somebody. His voice was getting all high-pitched and shaky as he literally started slamming his head against the door, yelling at me to open up. With each slam, the door frame shuddered and the desk chair moved. On one of the hits, the door actually bent inward so much I thought he'd get in. I shrieked and told him I had called the cops and they were on their way. He went still, waiting outside in tense quiet until the distant sound of a siren echoed through the night. It might have been miles off on the highway, but he heard it and backed off. I heard the footsteps retreat before chilling silence fell. I stayed put against the wall, holding the lamp until morning. I hurriedly packed my bag and sprinted straight to my car. The tire was completely flat. The valve stem had been removed and was sitting there on the pavement next to the wheel. I threw on the spare and got out of there without looking back. I tried filing a report, but they told me there wasn't any Pine Haven motel on that route, and that I might have hallucinated the whole thing because of my exhaustion. I've looked it up on maps countless times. The exit shows up on satellite view, but the ramp goes into a dirt road that stops dead in the middle of the woods. I don't usually talk about this whole thing, but now, whenever I'm on a long drive, I constantly check the rear view, expecting him to track me down because his demons have been asking him to. This happened about 3 years ago, and I still think about it more often than I should. I was driving back from a work trip in Philadelphia to my apartment in Richmond, Virginia. It's normally about a 5-hour drive, but I had made the mistake of leaving late in the afternoon, and by the time I hit the Delaware-Maryland border, a bad thunderstorm rolled in and slowed everything down to a crawl. By the time I crossed into Maryland, I was already exhausted. The rain wasn't letting up, and my eyes were starting to burn from staring at taillights for hours. I knew I needed to stop somewhere, but I was stubborn and kept telling myself I only had a couple more hours to go. That was stupid. I should have just pulled over at a rest stop and slept in my car. Instead, I got off at an exit somewhere in northern Maryland. I don't remember the town's name. I just remember seeing a blue sign advertising a gas station and 2 motels. I picked the one that looked slightly less run down, which isn't saying much. The parking lot was mostly empty. Maybe 4 other cars were spread out across the whole lot. The building itself was 2 stories tall, U-shaped, with the office at the bottom of the U facing the road. The paint was peeling. Some of the balcony railings looked like they were barely hanging on. You know the type. I went into the office and rang the little bell on the counter. Nobody came out for almost 2 minutes. I was about to leave when a woman walked out from the back room. She was probably in her 60s. Gray hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing a sweater that looked 2 sizes too big. She didn't say hello. She just looked at me with this blank expression and waited. I asked for a room. She nodded and started typing on an old computer. While she was doing that, I glanced around the office. There were stacks of paper everywhere, a coffee maker that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months, and a bulletin board covered in handwritten notes. One of the notes caught my eye. It was a piece of notebook paper taped to the wall behind the counter that said, "Room 14, do not rent," in all caps. I didn't think much of it at the time. Every motel has a room with a broken AC or a plumbing issue. She gave me a key to room 11, which was on the 2nd floor at the far end of the left wing. I paid cash, took the key, and headed up. The staircase was metal and rattled with each step. The balcony creaked under my feet. As I walked toward my room, I noticed that most of the doors I passed had those old-fashioned locks on them, the ones that swing over the handle, but a few of them had been reinforced with hasps and padlocks from the outside. That struck me as weird. Why would someone need to padlock a motel room door from the outside? Room 11 was fine, nothing special. Old floral bedspread, a tube TV bolted to the dresser, carpet that had probably once been beige but was now a little closer to brown. The bathroom had one of those shower tub combos with a squeaky faucet handle. I took a quick shower, changed into sweatpants, and lay down with the TV on some news channel. I was starting to drift off when 3 quick knocks banged on my door, jolting me up. I waited for whoever it was to knock again, but all I could hear was silence. I eventually figured some drunk person had hit the wrong door and settled back down. After about 5 minutes, it happened again. Before I could check, it stopped again. The 3rd time it happened, though, I hurriedly got up and ripped the door open. But the balcony was empty, and all the doors were bolted shut. Pissed off, I stomped down to the office and told the woman someone was messing with my door. She told me it was impossible. I was the only guest in that whole wing, and every other room was vacant. I argued, but she literally showed me the logs. Crapped out, I went back upstairs and passed out. Nothing happened for a couple of hours. Around 2, I woke up starving. I remembered a vending machine by the staircase, so I grabbed some change and threw the door open. Suddenly, I heard a door swinging open and shut. I followed the sound and stopped outside room 14. The heavy padlock was gone, and the door was drifting in the breeze. I should have just walked away, but the padlock and the weird "Do Not Rent" sign had me hooked. I stepped in. It was pitch black inside. I flipped the light switch twice, but the room didn't have any power. I turned on my phone flashlight and shone it across the room. When the beam hit the bed, I nearly peed my pants. The sheets were totally soaked in blood. It was smeared and sprayed everywhere, from the dirty fabric to the wall right above the headboard. The lamp was knocked over, and the wood had deep scratches in it, like someone had fought to get free. Honestly, it looked like a full-blown murder scene. My hands started shaking, and throat dried up. I started backing up toward the door. Suddenly, laughter started echoing from the bathroom. I froze. I was definitely not alone. My heart started pounding. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind or old pipes, anything to explain it away. But I couldn't bring myself to point the light toward the bathroom door. Then, these super screams tore through the room, followed by wet choking and a blade tearing into flesh. Sanity kicked in, and I lunged for the door. Before I could reach it, it swung shut. Tears welled in my eyes. I couldn't find the handle in the dark. I started beating on the wood, shouting for help. Stars danced in my vision. It started going dark around the edges. The very last thing I remember is turning around. A woman was lying on the bed, with her mouth wide open. Her face was covered in blood, and she was staring right at me. When I woke up, I was in room 11. Sunlight was slicing through the curtains. I was still wearing my shoes. I immediately ran to room 14's door, which was locked tight with that huge padlock. I tried pulling it and pushing the door, but it wouldn't open. I hurriedly packed my bag and checked out. I drove straight back to Virginia and never breathed a word about it. I still have no idea what I saw. Was it real, or did I just hallucinate the whole thing from being so tired? It was so vivid, and I remember every little detail. I've tried coming up with countless explanations since, but I figure anything that'd explain the dead woman or how I got back into my own room. And I've definitely never gone back to find out. In December one year, my mom, dad, baby sister, and I went to stay with some family who lived up north. It never snowed where I lived, but during our stay, an awesome snowstorm rolled through and dumped several inches on the neighborhood. Our whole family went out to play, make snow angels and snowmen and all that typical stuff, but it soon devolved into a snowball fight between me and my cousin Leo. Within seconds, my baby sister started crying because she almost got hit, so we were ordered to go down the street. I didn't know where it was okay to go, but I just followed Leo's lead. I had a pretty good arm for playing baseball, so he was on the run from me. Eventually, he tried to lose me by ducking into a stand of trees. He weaved through the shrubs and bushes with surprising ease, but I had trouble keeping up. By the time I emerged into the clearing on the other side, I couldn't see him anymore. I froze, suddenly realizing I didn't know where I was and had lost the only person guiding me. I got my bearings and tried not to freak out, thinking Leo still had to be around. I was standing in the front yard of a house, one like any other in that neighborhood. Large, 2-story, big yard with a car out front, though a little worse for wear, and a complete lack of any holiday decorations. When I looked down at my feet, I saw footprints cutting across the yard. They couldn't have been anyone else's but Leo's. I followed his exact path, first making a straight line for the house before curving away from the front porch, hugging the side of the wall and making my way toward the backyard. As I rounded the corner to the back of the house, I expected Leo to be there waiting for me, ready to jump out and scare me or nail me in the face with a snowball. But his trail ended, and nobody was there. I looked all around, not seeing any sign of him. He couldn't have jumped anywhere or been able to cover his tracks so quickly in the perfect blanket of snow over the ground, so there was only one place he could have gone: inside the house. Now, initially, this wasn't as frightening as it should have been. After all, I didn't know anybody there, but maybe Leo knew the people that lived in that house and hid in there to freak me out. I was standing about 6 feet from the back door, right about where Leo's tracks ended, so I figured that's how he must have gotten in. Hoping this was all still part of our game, I knocked on the back door and shouted, "Come on out, Leo! I know you're in there!" My plan was to turn it around on him and freak him out, but when I heard nothing but silence, my stomach dropped. I started to think I screwed up and banged on some random stranger's door. Then, as the panic was taking over, the door clicked and slowly opened inward, revealing a dark, unlit interior. Hiding behind the door, peeking around the edge, was the bone-thin face of a woman. Her sunken eyes showed as much fear as they did malice, and they petrified me. Inside, I heard whispering from someone else, but it wasn't Leo. It sounded like multiple people. I remember imagining what it looked like in there, and all I could see was a pit of snakes. I stood there, unable to move for maybe 10 seconds, before the woman stepped out from behind the door into clear view.
"Would you like to join us?"
I could barely hear what she was saying because she was completely naked, standing in the bitter cold, looking halfway between dead and alive. Unable to think of a response, I tore my eyes away from the horrible sight of her and stared into the house. There, as my eyes adjusted to the dark, or perhaps as the light shifted, I saw my cousin's face, not 10 feet away. He was inside that house, with all those people, however many there were, whatever they were or weren't wearing, and the look on his face was somehow even more haunting than what I had just seen. Despite not wanting to acknowledge the woman in my field of vision, I saw her scrawny, wrinkly arm reach out to grab me. I panicked and finally ran for my life. I sprinted down the street, almost getting lost on the way back to my cousin's house, but then I found my family and frantically told them what was happening. The adults took me and packed me into the big SUV parked in the driveway. Then I directed them to the house. Before we got there, we ran into Leo. He was walking down the middle of the street, just a block away from the house, still wearing that same shell-shocked expression. However, the car outside and all the people inside were gone. There was nobody to report. The house was vacant. Leo's parents said the bank foreclosed on it nearly a year ago, and it had been sitting on the market ever since. I never had a clue. The for sale sign had been knocked down and buried in the snowfall, and I never got close enough to see the busted lockbox on the front door, which meant the key had been stolen by those freaks. We don't know how long they were living in there, but it couldn't have been that long with their car sitting out front. As for my cousin, he said he was, in fact, waiting behind the house to scare me when the door suddenly opened and he was pulled inside. He was frozen in shock the entire time, but then, after I ran away, the junkies panicked and forgot about him as they fled, so he just walked out. He never wanted to go into detail about anything else. As far as we know, nothing physically happened to him. He wasn't beaten or touched or anything like that, but the things he must have seen in there, I just can't imagine. I mean, I did get a taste of it myself, and it certainly scarred me for life, but Leo's experience must have been so much worse. Honestly, I think I'm better off not knowing the rest. I used to go skiing with my family every year. Those were some of my favorite memories. I told myself that when I became an adult, I would get my own skis and gear, then go on a trip with my friends. By the time I was finally able to fulfill that dream, I was no longer close with my old circle of friends, but I was engaged to my fiancée. To protect her privacy, I'll refer to her simply as Jane, though I assure you there is nothing plain about her. This trip was our secret pre-wedding honeymoon. We both bought brand new skis for it. This time we were old enough to drink, so we had a few before going up the mountain and snuck some shooters in our pockets for when we were on the slopes. It was a wonderful time together, all that we were hoping for and more. After several hours, we decided to take a break at the base of the mountain. As we recuperated, we were approached by another couple. It was very casual at first, just some compliments on our skis, but it turned into small talk, then full-on conversation. They said their names were Adam and Eve, which I pegged as fake names immediately, but the more they talked, the more I understood why they called themselves that. Apparently, they were van lifers, people who live and travel in their van full-time. They seemed like nice people, but they were a bit weird. I'm hesitant to call them hippies, but they did talk about a bunch of spiritual mumbo-jumbo and all the weird things they had done during their travels. Of course, I didn't want to be judgmental, especially when the man, Adam, pulled out a flask and offered us some. I jokingly asked if there was any LSD in it, but he laughed and said it was just vodka. All four of us took a good swig or two, and I could tell by how it was getting lighter that our new friends were indeed drinking it with us. Oh, and it was vodka, that's for sure. Shit tasted like a doctor's appointment. Anyway, we decided to stick together for the rest of the afternoon. Over the course of a few trips up and down the mountain, we tested each other's ability by taking more challenging paths each time. We shared our own drinks and had more of Adam's flask here and there until I was sure the liquor was all out. Then, about an hour before the slopes closed, the woman Eve, as she called herself, revealed an entirely new full flask of her own. By then, we were all tipsy and eager to keep the buzz going. I didn't hesitate to drink it this time, and neither did Jane. However, even through my inebriation, there was a nagging sensation in my hand. The flask really didn't feel like they were drinking out of it, not like the first one, but they had been so nice that I figured they must be strictly pacing themselves. As usual, we tried to get one last trip before we had to leave, still drinking as we rode up the lift a final time. This is about when Adam and Eve invited us to hang out afterwards, in their van, in the parking lot. But Jane and I were clear that we just wanted to get on the road so we could get home before it was too late. I could tell they didn't really appreciate our decision, but at first they didn't push it. Not until we reached the bottom, anyway. Suddenly, I felt 10 times drunker than I should have, and Jane was even worse off. Adam said something about how we must have overestimated the amount we were drinking, but I was sure we were going at a reasonable pace. They told us we were clearly too drunk to drive, so we should hang out with them for a while. I told them straight up, no way. Then I clipped off my skis, as well as Jane's, then carried all four as we started stumbling back to the parking lot. Something about those two was rapidly alarming me, but with each second, my ability to stand my ground against them was draining out of my body. It's hard to explain, but I didn't even feel drunk anymore. My mind was sober, but somehow tiny and unable to pilot my body, which now felt like a giant sack of dead weight. I remember thinking we just have to get to the car, but then I realized we were walking right past it. I tried reaching for it, only to see that I had dropped all our skis and Eve was now carrying them. At this point, my memory is like a slideshow. The next thing I saw was a large van, presumably their van. Then, Jane collapsed on the ground. Seconds later, Adam carrying her toward the van. The last image filled whatever was left of my mind with uncontainable rage. The only parts of me I was aware of were screaming, "Don't let them take Jane. If they take her, I might as well die." Then, that was it. Next thing I knew, I was waking up on the same patch of asphalt, freezing my ass off with a pounding pain in my head. I thought I was dead. I thought I'd failed to save Jane, so I kinda wished that was the truth. However, reality was far more bittersweet. When I thought I was valiantly fighting through whatever drug they had given me so I could single-handedly save Jane, I was really just screaming random, unintelligible nonsense. It was, however, loud enough to alert bystanders, who came to help just in time. I was completely unconscious, though based on their accounts, they managed to take hold of Jane, but they were unable to keep those freaks from getting in their van and escaping with all our brand new, expensive-as-hell skis. Still, I owe those good people everything for keeping them from kidnapping Jane, and also me. Lord knows what sick, terrible things they had planned for us. I'm thankful none of that happened to us, but sadly the police were never able to track that so-called Adam and Eve couple down, and ever since then, our once beloved hobby of skiing just brings back this terrible memory. Last winter, I visited my childhood home during a break from college. The whole town, which isn't much to speak of, was blanketed in snow. I almost crashed my car on the icy roads just getting there, so I didn't plan to go on many outings. Instead, I spent all my time at home. Christmas had passed and we were just waiting for the new year, but I was struggling to sleep after everyone else had gone to bed. I crept out of my room, looking for something to do, yet there was nothing. Outside, the snow was coming down gently, with barely any wind to knock it around. I knew it was freezing cold, but the cabin fever was getting to me, so I stole one of my dad's cigarettes off the kitchen counter and bundled up for a late-night smoke. As I sat in a rocking chair out front, I sparked up and took everything in. My old front yard, the swing set, every stone and every pit, all buried in white. The path would be needing reshoveling in the morning, and no doubt my dad would put me up to it as punishment. For now, it was just me and the near silence, save for the almost imperceptible patter of snowfall and my own breathing. It was a new moon, but the clear country skies bathed my old haunt in starlight, and though it was difficult to find things to miss about home, I had to admit it could be beautiful at times. Even after I finished the cigarette, I coughed and bundled up tighter, wanting to stay out and enjoy it a little longer. But that last drag turned out to be the final sand in the hourglass. My peace was soon disturbed by the distant crack of a branch. Immediately, my ears honed in on the sound. Once was probably just a tree flexing in a gust of wind, but after I heard a second crack, I knew it was an animal. I continued to listen to its bumbling trek through the woods around the house, slowly growing closer. Still, at relative ease, I tried to guess what kind of animal it could be. Whatever it was, it sure as hell wasn't graceful. Perhaps it was a freezing raccoon, a sleepwalking bear, or some other desperate creature. Then, I heard a sound that nearly stopped my heart. The backyard gate opening. It wasn't like a rattling of some dumb animal bumping into it. No, it was the sound of a human opening it with precision. Now, in a full state of alarm, I kept silent, standing up from my chair and sneaking back into the house, locking the front door. If it makes any sense, I could just tell that the air inside hadn't moved since I stepped out, so I was sure nobody in my family had woken up. Whoever opened the gate, they came from outside. I had to see who it was, but I could barely get to my feet to move. My body was telling me I was safer where I was, and it wasn't time to do anything stupid. Still, my family might be in danger if I just cowered, so I forced myself to walk to the back of the house. As I inched my way there, I began to hear a new sound, one a lot more regular than before, a rhythmic scraping, digging in the snow. I began to worry someone was trying to access a partially buried window in the basement, but when I made it to the back door, I saw something quite different. There was a man, covered head to toe in thick black clothing, standing in the backyard, right between the shed and the barren vegetable garden. He had a large shovel and had just begun digging a hole in the snow. Lying beside him on the ground, a white plastic garbage bag. It almost looked like just another lump of snow, but the brightly colored drawstrings gave it away. I didn't have time to wonder what was in the bag. I had to do something. I was too scared to try and scare him off, so I decided to document him. I pulled out my phone and held down the record button to start a video, but in my haste, I forgot the most crucial thing. I didn't turn off the flash. For merely an instant, the flash blared into existence, reflecting off the glass of the back door and washing out any image I could have gotten. But more importantly, it gave me away. I ducked out of sight, but it was too late. I looked outside and saw the man walking up to the door. I panicked and ran to my parents' room. I woke my dad up and told him to take the shotgun out to the back door. But by the time we got there, the man was gone. He had even covered up the hole he was digging, leaving only a set of footprints that led from the back door and into the woods. He must have walked up to the door and tried to open it, then turned around and escaped while he still had time to cover up what he was doing. Naturally, my dad assumed I was playing a prank on him and scolded me for smelling like tobacco. Then he told me to go to bed. Nobody in my family believed me. Their nearest neighbor was so far away that it didn't make sense from any of them to try and bury something in their backyard, let alone in the middle of a frigid night. I, however, have a theory. Growing up, there was this old creep in town. All the kids suspected him of being some kind of serial killer. It seemed like every week he had a different pet animal with him. Some new car parked in his driveway behind his, but he always insisted he lived alone. No pets, no guests, no family. He never got caught doing anything, but what if they said about him was true? Maybe he's gotten so bold that he started burying the remains of his victims, human or otherwise, under the snow of other people's backyards. Perhaps the point is that when the snow thaws, the grisly, rotting remains are uncovered long after he's gone.
My feet ached and something sour churned in my stomach. My brother Dave and I had been exploring Helsinki all day, and we were exhausted. We were stranded in town for a day because of a canceled flight, and we had turned it into a little sightseeing adventure. I didn't know anything about Helsinki or Finland before that day, and we let our phones guide us around town to various restaurants and sites. Now we needed to get back to our hotel, and both of our phones were dying. I was looking forward to going back. My stomach had been giving me issues all afternoon. We ate some kind of fish for lunch. At least that's what I think it was. The English translations on the menus weren't very helpful, and we didn't get useful results when we searched on our phones either. I called the rideshare because my phone was at 4% compared to Dave's 2%. But a minute or so before the car showed up, my screen went dark as my phone died. The car, a tiny little European model with decals from multiple rideshare companies, pulled up in front of us. The stocky bearded man in the driver's seat rolled down his window and said something to us in Finnish. Dave and I shrugged at each other. This was probably our ride. We shoved ourselves in the tiny back seat and said hello to the driver. He nodded and smiled. He eased the car away from the curb and into the flow of traffic. Dave had a better view of the driver than I did, and I could feel his body stiffen with anxiety next to me. Dave started typing something on his phone and held it out to me. All I could read on the screen was, "The driver is," and then the screen blipped out as Dave's phone also died. Dave leaned over and whispered in my ear. "Bleeding," he said. "The driver is bleeding. Scratches on his forearms." I snuck a peek. The driver was wearing long sleeves, but they were slipping down his thick, hairy forearms, exposing fresh gashes. He pushed his sleeves over his wrist to cover the scratches up, but I knew they were there. The driver held the wheel in a white-knuckle grip. I pictured those hands closed around someone's throat while someone scratched at his forearms in self-defense. That cramp in my stomach worsened. The combination of strange fish and stress about our driver's arms was making me nauseous. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation. This had to be our driver, right? And he had to be trustworthy enough to drive for the rideshare company. "Are you from around here?" I asked. The driver shook his head. That didn't make me feel better. Was he shaking his head saying he wasn't from around here? Or was he shaking his head to say he couldn't understand me? Dave and I exchanged a worried look. Dave leaned forward and asked if we were going to the Hilton. The driver nodded his head this time, but the engine roared as he put his foot on the gas. I said a little prayer and cursed myself for letting my phone die in a foreign country. A few minutes later, a bridge appeared in front of us. I didn't remember exactly where our hotel was, but I knew we didn't go over a bridge on our way from the hotel to downtown. I tapped Dave's knee, and he nodded back at me. I turned my palms face up in a "what do we do" motion, and Dave shook his head and mouthed, "I don't know." That pain in my stomach exploded again, like someone was wringing out my internal organs. I doubled over in agony as I heard the surface beneath the car's wheels change. We were on the bridge. I wondered what was waiting for us on the other side. I felt a pang of hope when I saw a stoplight at the end of the bridge. Perfect. We could get out and escape. We just needed a red light. The light at the end of the bridge remained green, and we glided right through. I'd never been so mad to hit a green light. At the next stoplight, the driver sped up just enough to make it through before it turned red. This guy was going to do everything he could to keep that car moving. He swerved around a construction zone, slinging our bodies around the back seat. That's when my stomach finally gave in. I could feel it coming, climbing up from my belly to my chest and into my throat. I put a hand over my mouth and retched. Dave looked over and saw me. He yelled to the driver that I was about to puke. I burped, sending a noxious cloud of fish and bile-scented air around the interior of the tiny car. That was enough for the driver. I heard him gag and shout something that I'm sure was a Finnish curse word. He swerved the car again and slammed on the brake. The car lurched to a stop along the side of the road, and I threw my door open just in time to unleash my lunch onto the pavement. Dave pushed me out of the car and I nearly slipped in my vomit on the way out. Dave yelled a sarcastic thank you to the driver and slammed the door behind us. He grabbed my hand and practically dragged me along the sidewalk away from the car. Fortunately, we were still in a well-populated area, so the driver didn't jump out and pursue us. I looked back and saw the car driving away. My feet still ached and we had a long walk ahead of us, but my stomach felt better. If you find yourself in an unfamiliar place, or even if you're just trying to get home in your own town, be sure to double-check who your driver is and what kind of car they're driving. Conserve as much of your phone battery as you can, and be careful out there. We were lucky that the fish, or whatever that was, didn't agree with me that day, and that our mysterious driver had a sensitive stomach. Otherwise, who knows where we'd be. I'd been doing rideshare for about a year by then, working evenings into the late hours. You get used to things. Drunk passengers who can barely form sentences, couples bickering in the back seat, long silent rides where nobody says a word. The silence never bothered me. That night, I'd gone nearly 40 minutes without a single ping when a request finally came in. A strip mall on the edge of town. The kind of place that feels busy during the day and completely abandoned after midnight. A bowling alley, a couple of small restaurants, a dollar store. All dark, all closed. The name on the request was just D. No photo. I almost passed on it, but it was the only request I'd seen in a while. I accepted and drove over. The lot was empty, like I expected. A few overhead lights were still on, casting that dull orange glow over the asphalt. One person stood near the bowling alley entrance, tall, wearing a hoodie, hands buried in his pockets. He didn't wave or step toward me. He He just stood there, slightly still, watching as I pulled up. I rolled down my window. "UD?" He leaned forward, squinting at me through the glass, then gave a small nod and climbed into the back. The door closed gently. He said nothing. I started the trip. The destination was about 20 minutes out, a residential area. I didn't drive through often. I confirmed it with him. He said yeah, quiet, flat, and that was it. The silence that followed wasn't the usual kind. It wasn't someone zoning out on their phone or watching the street go by. It felt heavier. I glanced in the rearview mirror a couple of times. Each time he was staring straight ahead, not at anything in particular. At the back of my head, I told myself to let it go. Some people are just off, socially awkward, not my problem. Then he spoke. "You still driving this late?" "Yeah," I said. "Nights are usually better." A pause. I watched his eyes move in the mirror. "Thought you would have stopped by now," he said. I frowned. "Stopped? I only started last year." "Right," he said. It didn't sound like agreement. It sounded like a correction. He went quiet again. A few minutes passed. Then the questions started back up. Casual on the surface, but something underneath them felt off. Did I live around here? Did I usually pick up from that plaza? Each one felt less like conversation and more like he was checking something, verifying details, lining something up. The unease settled in slowly. We were about 15 minutes in when he leaned forward and pointed. "Pull into that driveway." I looked up. The destination in the app was still a few houses down. "That's not the... just pull in," he said. His voice was calm, not aggressive, but certain in a way that made me stop arguing. I slowed and turned in. The house was dark, no lights inside or out. The yard was overgrown, grass crowding the walkway, paint peeling off the siding. No car, no signs of anyone home. I stopped near the front. "This your place?" He didn't answer. He was staring at the house. "Wait here," he said, and got out. He didn't go to the front door. He moved along the side of the house and disappeared into the dark. I sat there with my hands on the wheel. A minute passed. Nothing. No sounds, no lights. Just the quiet of an empty street and the trip still running on my phone. I was thinking about just leaving when I noticed it. The side door of the house, slightly ajar. Just enough to catch the street light. It hadn't been like that before. Then he came back, walking faster now, not running, but with a different kind of energy, purposeful, changed. He got in and pulled the door shut hard. "Go." I pulled out without asking. We were back on the street before I said anything. "Everything all right?" Nothing. I checked the mirror. He was watching me again. Not just generally forward, but directly at my face. "You change your car?" he asked. "No, had it the whole time." "You look different," he said. My grip tightened on the wheel. "I don't think you've had me before." He didn't answer that. He leaned back and kept watching. "Take me back to where you picked me up." I turned around and drove back toward the strip mall. The ride back felt longer. He didn't ask anything more, but he didn't stop looking at me either. At one point he leaned forward, tilting slightly, studying my reflection in the mirror more carefully. Then he said it, quiet, almost to himself. "You're not him." I didn't respond. A pause. Then, "He drives nights too." Something dropped in my stomach. That's when it all landed. The questions, the checking, the house, the way he'd been staring at me since the moment he got in. He hadn't been studying me. He'd been comparing me, looking for someone specific. And that house, whatever had been waiting inside that house, that had been meant for someone else. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I just drove. When we pulled back into the strip mall, I parked under the same light where I'd picked him up. The lot was still empty. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then he leaned forward one last time. "If it was you," he said, "this would have gone different." He opened the door, stepped out, and paused, half in, half out. He looked at me one more time. Then he shut the door and walked off into the dark behind the building. I sat there long after he was gone. I ended the trip. I drove home. I didn't take another ride that night. Sometimes now, late at night, when I get a pickup from somewhere quiet and empty, I check the name before I accept. Not because I'm afraid of who might get in, but because I can't shake the thought that one night, someone's going to climb into my back seat, catch my face in that mirror, and recognize me. Sometimes you just need a pizza on a Monday night. I had a long, frustrating day at work, and I made up my mind before I left the office that I was going to order pizza that night. It gave me something to look forward to as I finished off my day. It was a dreary February day, and the sun was almost down by the time I got home from work. I pulled up Uber Eats and went to my usual restaurants. We didn't have that many places to choose from in our little town. Manelli's Pizza was a local place that made a delicious barbecue chicken pizza. I ordered that and threw in an order of breadsticks. I kicked back on my couch and felt my anxiety melt away as I waited for the food to arrive. I saw the car's headlights pull up, perfectly on time. I slumped down on the couch so the driver couldn't see me waiting for him. It's a little embarrassing to be waiting so desperately for your food. And as a woman, I just generally think it's creepy for a strange man to be able to look at me through the window. I saw a shape climb out of the car with a box and a paper bag in hand. My mouth was watering by the time the guy reached my porch. My porch light was on and I could tell he was tall and thin, and dressed in a black hoodie with a reflective Nike logo on the front. I couldn't make out much about his face. He dropped the food at the door, took a photo of it, and walked away. I leapt up from the couch, flung the door open, grabbed the food, and closed the door again before the driver had gotten back to his car. I went straight to my bedroom in the back of the house. I decided I was going to eat in bed and binge a reality show on my laptop. After 2 episodes, I was full of pizza and breadsticks and was drifting off. Then a horrifying realization struck me. The next morning was trash day, and the truck always came before I left for work. I needed to take the trash out that night. I cursed and groaned, but I put on shoes and a coat and forced myself to go outside. As I rolled the trash container down the driveway, I saw a parked car on the street in front of my house. It was in the same spot the Uber Eats driver had parked 2 hours earlier. I admittedly hadn't registered what kind of car the Uber Eats delivery guy had driven, but this car was the same general size and shape as his. The engine was cut off and the windows were cracked open, despite it being cold out. After I reached the curb and put the trash in its position, I walked slowly over toward the car. I kept my distance but wanted to get close enough to peek in through the windows. I was probably 10 feet from the car when I saw something bright in the driver's seat. It was a reflective Nike logo, just like the one on my delivery driver's hoodie. I took off running up the driveway, glancing back one time to see if anyone was following me. I swear I saw a shape in the driver's seat, but I didn't look back long enough to get a good look. I closed and locked the front door and turned off my living room lights. I went to my bedroom in the back of the house and pulled up the Uber Eats app. I never even think to look at those pictures they take of the food, but I went to the photo he took. The pizza turned to cement in my stomach and I thought I was going to be sick. The photo he submitted wasn't of the food. It was a photo through my front window of me, peeking over the back of my sofa and watching the driver. It would have been funny if it weren't so creepy. I ran around the house and checked that all my doors and windows were locked. Then I reported him on the Uber app. I tried to find a number to call, but of course, all they had was an electronic form to fill out. I didn't know how to get this man away from my house. I lived in this house for almost 2 years, and somehow I still didn't know my neighbors. I cursed myself for being so antisocial, so content to just come home, close myself up inside, and lose myself in trash TV every night before I fell asleep. Maybe if I had developed a relationship with one of them, they would have alerted me to this mysterious man being parked outside my house for 2 hours. I told myself I would make more of an effort moving forward, but first I had to take care of this. With nobody else to call, I dialed the police. I didn't know what else to do. I explained the situation to them, and they said they would send a car over to drive by as soon as possible and scare the delivery driver away. I grabbed a knife from my kitchen and went to my dark living room. I peeked out the front door again. The car was still there, but I couldn't tell if the driver was still inside. I sat there in my dark house, knife in hand, as I listened for the sound of rattling doorknobs or tapping on my windows. It felt like an eternity, but it was actually only 5 minutes or so before I saw approaching headlights. A police car drove by, slowing down to a crawl as it went by my house. A shape popped up in the driver's seat of the delivery car, and his headlights flashed to life. The cop car wasn't even out of sight by the time the Uber Eats car took off in the opposite direction. I appreciated how quickly the police responded, but it still terrifies me how long the delivery car sat in front of my house without me noticing. If I hadn't remembered to take my trash out, that guy might have sat there all night. He hasn't come back to my house since then, thankfully. An Uber apparently fired him. I also changed my name to MK instead of Marjorie, so drivers couldn't tell whether I was a man or woman. All in all, I was lucky, but I've reached out to my neighbors since then, and I've made friends with a couple of them. I've even been a little friendlier to people at work. I'm going to be more careful with giving out my address and using services like Uber Eats in the future. But now that I have a little more of a community at work and at home, I have more people looking out for me. And I'm looking out for them as well.
This is something really weird that happened not too long after I got my first job. When I was 17, I got a job at Walmart as a cashier. I was young and I had never had any kind of job experience before, so I didn't really know what I was doing very well. I don't remember a ton from my first shifts, but this happened on what I think was my 3rd or 4th time working there. As a cashier, I would work mostly in the afternoon until sometime at night. So on this night, it was getting later and I would be getting off of work soon. To that point, it had been a pretty average shift as far as my memory goes. Things were a little bit busy earlier, but then it got quieter and quieter the later at night that it got. As I was approaching the end of my shift, I had maybe half an hour left when a coworker approached me. She came up and asked me when I was off, and I told her that I was off pretty soon. She then told me that when I had about 10 minutes left to leave my check lane and go to the back room and pointed over to it. She said that she needed help with something and it wouldn't take long. So I told her okay, and then she left and I stayed at my checkout. I had never seen that woman before, but there were a lot of coworkers at the Walmart that I had never seen, as the stores are always very big. So things were quiet for the rest of my shift. With 10 minutes left, I did what I was told. I turned off the light to my checkout and then I walked to the back of the store. I didn't know what I needed to help with, but I didn't question it. Being new to the job, I was willing to do whatever they asked, even if I was just hired as a cashier. So I went to where I thought I was supposed to go. There were the swinging doors to the back room area, and this was in the back corner of the store kind of. It was quiet over there, and when I got in, it looked like the typical back room. However, I didn't see anyone. I took a few steps in, and then I heard the same woman's voice. She called out my name, but she was way farther down, and I could not see her. I said that I was there, and she told me to go down by her. I honestly could not see the woman at all, but if you've ever been to a Walmart back room, I'm sure some are different, but most of them have boxes everywhere, and they have sort of their own little aisles. It was all organized, but not as clearly and presentable as on the sales floor, and there's lots of other random boxes and equipment around. I could tell that she was in the far back, but I couldn't tell exactly where. I started walking, and she yelled at me, "Over here!" I turned and started going towards her. I made it maybe 20 feet, and I still couldn't see her. That's when I heard the door open behind me. The same swinging doors that I had just gone through. I looked back and saw a man there who also worked at Walmart. He too I had never seen before, but he asked me what I was doing. I stopped and I told him that I was asked to help with something back there. He came over to me and he asked me by who. I didn't know the woman's name, and I told him that. He looked confused, and he said that he didn't know who that would be. Then he called out asking who was there. This time, though, there was no response. We walked farther up, and then we heard someone walking away kind of quickly, but they were still out of view. When we made it kind of around the corner a ways up, there was an exit door that was sort of propped open. I remember the guy saying he figured whoever was there had left. He opened the door and looked outside, but didn't see anyone. He then told me that he worked in that area in a department, and he said that they didn't need help with anything. He told me that as a cashier, I probably would not be asked to help with anything back there anyways. So I was told that I could clock out and leave, and he would try to figure out what was going on, and so I left. After that, I never heard anything more about it. I don't know what that woman was up to or who she even was. She probably didn't even work at the Walmart, and looking back, that was really weird. A couple of years ago, I was living by myself in an apartment building. To give you a little bit of background, I'm a woman and had lived in the apartment for almost a year. It was a pretty decent place, as it was only a few years old and for the most part had no problems. At this particular time, I was working an office job on weekdays, and the office was a fairly large building with a few floors and a parking lot. It was close to the city, but it was kind of on its own plot of land, so it was more private. There was a large parking lot in the front, and then the building and grass around it. It had a small private drive that went up to it, so that's the basic background for the story. It really starts when one day I was at work and I left for the day to go home. I typically parked kind of in the corner, and the parking lot would never be completely full, as people were there at all hours. But when I left, I saw there was a guy sitting at a small table that was a ways off in the grass. I had never seen him before, but I really didn't think much of it. I did recognize or know most of the people around the office, because it wasn't that huge and I had been there for a while. There would obviously be some people that I didn't know though, but really I thought nothing of it. However, maybe just a few days later I noticed the guy again, except this time he was sitting in a car that was parked not too far away from mine. Once again, this was when I was leaving. I saw the man look at me and then look away, but I just figured that he worked there now and maybe he was new and that was it. But the next time I saw him is what made me suspicious. I arrived to work early in the morning. I parked in my usual area, and when I got out, I was walking to the building and I noticed the guy. He was sitting in a car that was backed into another spot. However, the split second I made eye contact with him, I saw him duck down really fast and go out of view. I didn't know why he would do that. It was like he was trying to hide. This made me stop and continue to watch him because it was really peculiar. After a few seconds, there was nothing. But then he sat up part of the way, saw me again, and then quickly drove away in his car. It was really suspicious. I went inside to work, and I also realized that it was strange for him to be leaving at this hour. There were not too many people that would work all sorts of different hours like that. If I had seen him when I was leaving before, that meant he would probably work more normal hours, so why would he be leaving now early in the morning? That was another strange thing, and I told myself that I would keep an eye out for him going forward. After that, though, I didn't see him for a few days. I was starting to forget about the whole thing. But then one day, I was arriving back home from somewhere at night. As I got up to my floor, I turned a corner, and I happened to see someone leaving their apartment. It was the same guy. He lived just down the hall from me, about 3 or 4 apartments down. I knew that it was him. When I saw him, I quickly turned back and went around the corner, and I don't think that he saw me. I heard him walking down the hallway, and I quickly went down the stairs until I figured he was gone. Then I went back to my apartment. I could not believe that the guy was living in my building, and just a few doors down from me. Did he work at my job actually? Or was he stalking me or something? For a few days, I didn't know, and nothing happened. Then I got lucky. Maybe a week later, I was leaving my place one morning, and I heard a door open down the hallway. I looked over, and I saw that it was the same place that one guy lived. My first reaction was to go back inside, but when I looked, I saw that it was not the same guy who was leaving. It was another guy leaving that same apartment. I decided to go ask him who the other guy was. So I walked over and said hi to the guy. I had never seen him before either. But I described the creepy guy to him and asked if he knew who I was talking about. The man said that was his roommate. He told me that he didn't know him that well, but they had been living in the apartment together. However, he told me that his roommate left 3 days ago and he hadn't heard from him or seen him since. He said he hadn't answered any of his texts or calls. I asked him if he knew where the guy worked, and he told me yes, but when he told me the place the guy worked, it was not my company and not anywhere near it. I told the man what happened, and he said that he thought his roommate seemed odd and that he didn't want to live with him anymore. Then we went our separate ways. I never saw either of those guys again. I'm sure someone else moved into that apartment. I still don't know the full story, but it sure seems like that guy was trying to stalk me.
I grew up all my life glued to a computer. When I first started talking, I was already browsing through my uncle's computer, switching between games. By the time I was 10, I was talking over my family's MSN accounts and making them send each other awkward messages. I was 10 at the time, so the messages were stuff like, "I hate you," or "Give me back my Power Ranger." As you could imagine, I had no friends growing up. I was bullied and pushed around a lot. I'm autistic, so I guess that was the reason. I don't know, nor will I ever. My old man kept telling me that I had to stand up for myself, that I had to show them that I wasn't afraid. Truth is, I couldn't fight back. I tried, but my punches were weak and my kicks would tickle. I spent the best part of 6 years thinking the only way that I could fight back was by physically fighting them. Little did I know that the world I grew up in, the virtual world, was about to become the second life for everyone. From here on, my mistakes started to pile up. When I turned 16, everyone was using Facebook and Twitter. Whatever was popular, people would flock to it. I had a main bully, you could say. His name was Brock. He was the definition of an asshole. I guess it made what I did to him easier to live with. Brock loved to brag. His girlfriend was hot, his figure was fit, and he was amazing at sports. His only downside was that he was dumb as shit. And he hated anyone that excelled academically. Surprise, surprise, I was a smartass. I was incredibly good at solving problems. I guess that was the upside to my autism. He hated that, and proceeded to make my life a living hell. I tried fighting back again using my weak body, forgetting my strongest weapon was my mind. One day I was browsing Facebook and found Brock in the suggested friends. He was in my world, and suddenly, something clicked. I created a burn account, jazzed it up and made it look legit. I added Brock as a friend and proceeded to find out as much as I could about him. I found his girlfriend and added her too. I sent Brock an email from Facebook claiming that his account was compromised and had to download a PDF file with all of our security measures. I now had access to his laptop and proceeded to find out everything there was to know about him. I knew so much that at any point in time, I could tell you where he was, what he was doing, and who he was doing it with. I had his laptop camera send me images every so often, so I knew what he was up to. When his girlfriend came over, I was ready. I booted up my online dating application and started sending messages to Brock. "Hey, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last week was a blast." I won't go into too much detail, but due to the fact that I knew what he was up to, it was easy to convince his girlfriend that his online babe was real. It didn't stop there. I downloaded to his laptop as much gay porn as I could find. This was a time where homosexuality wasn't as accepted as it is today. You can imagine how his parents reacted to his fun drive. He didn't come back to school since then. I guess he moved out of town. I don't know. I didn't care to look anymore. To me, this was a small victory, and I relished in it. I wish it would have stopped there, but I was addicted. That feeling of justice being served by my own hands was one that I loved and wanted more, so I targeted criminals, the type that use the dark web to hide and spread their filth. For 4 years straight, I was a pain in their asses. Pedophiles, rapists, heavy drug dealers, you name it. If they were online, I was making their lives a living hell. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was hiding myself pretty well. But fuck, something was following me every step of the way, and it would soon tell me. I woke up one morning as any normal day. I made eggs and toast for breakfast with a glass of orange juice. Booted up my desktop and browsed Reddit. The usual was on. Guys complaining that something was overpowered, something was underpowered, the game designers weren't listening. The usual morning chuckle. Then I heard a ping. It was the Facebook Messenger notification sound. Funny, I didn't open Facebook yet. Maybe I did and forgot? Wouldn't make sense as I rarely used Facebook. It was odd, but not enough to sound any major alarms. A message from somebody I didn't know.
Hey Danny, what's the weather like in Japan?
What the fuck? Weather in Japan? I'm on the other side of the world. The name read James Puckerson. On my other monitor, I started going through his profile, trying to find any mutual friends. Someone I met at a party or something. I responded with, "Sunny, I hope. Anyone who knows me knows that I hate the rain." I kept looking, but nothing of interest was popping up. James replied,
Oh, funny guy. Tell me, Danny, do you enjoy playing games?
At this point, I thought he was referring to video games. Yeah, dude, I wouldn't mind some League of Legends right about now.
Oh, Danny, I don't mean one of those childish games. I mean a real game. You know, the type that involves putting one's life on the line.
I let out a chuckle. Someone probably hacked my Facebook account and is now trolling me.
This isn't a joke, Danny. I take these games extremely serious.
Okay. What? How did he know that I laughed? Did he guess? There's no way he could see me. My camera isn't even plugged in. How could he have gotten into my apartment? My Facebook profile had a fake address on it. I never used my real address for anything. Not even for Amazon or eBay. This has to be a joke. I replied, sure dude, I'm bored as fuck anyway. I was buying some time to try and find out where this son of a bitch was. I scoured everywhere trying to find any small clue to latch onto. I found something, kept going, and looked into it more, eventually leading up to an address. When I looked at the address, I froze. I could feel my blood draining from my face. It was my address. I was the only one living there, but somehow this asshole was using my address as a cover. Another message came in.
I see you've gone extremely pale, Danny. What's the matter? Don't believe in ghosts?
I couldn't move. This guy could see me. He knew every move I was making, and I didn't know what to do. Do I run away and burn everything down? Fry my hard drives and shred my motherboard? What the fuck was going on?
Ring ring, Danny. Ring ring.
My phone starts to ring. The caller ID read, Mom. I picked up. I hesitated to speak. I can't show my mom I'm afraid of something. She would worry. I tried to act cool. Hey Mom, everything alright? What I heard next made me drop my phone. It made me realize that this shit was real, and it wasn't a joke. I heard a voice, obviously modulated to hide the identity of the caller, but the threat was real, and I knew who it was.
Hey Danny, what's the weather like in Japan?
I stood frozen in pure horror. Panic swept over my body, and thoughts flooded my mind. What the hell happened to my mother? Is she okay? What is this son of a bitch doing with her phone? I knew I had to calm down. Something didn't seem right. I picked up the phone and looked at the caller ID. It just said, Mom. No number. Fuck. How could I be so stupid? He was just masking his caller ID. Must be to throw me off balance. So I played along. There must be something I'm missing. What are you doing with my mom's phone? Where is she? Is she okay? A laugh came from the other end. A deep, disgusting laugh. I decided to record the call. Maybe I can play around with the recording and find out this caller's real voice. It may not be much, but this asshole knows where I live, and probably who my parents are as well. He starts talking.
Danny. The safety of your mother depends on the outcome of our little game. I told you, one's life is on the line. But I should have elaborated and said it shouldn't be necessarily the player's life. So, are you ready to play?
At this point, I had a thought. How can James see me? I have no cameras connected to the Wi-Fi. My desktop camera is disconnected. And I ripped out my laptop camera when I got the damn thing. Another option would be he broke into my apartment and installed the cameras when I was out. But why would he risk getting caught like that? I may have cameras at home and catch him doing it. No, he must be using one of my devices. It doesn't seem like I have a choice, James. Let's fucking play. I braced myself for what he would say. We've all watched those horror movies. Suddenly I knew. I wanted to throw myself from my apartment for how stupid I'd been. In my hand, I held a single device that had a camera and was connected to my Wi-Fi. My fucking phone. I didn't want to jump to the conclusion that was the only camera that was being used, so I decided to test it. Before I do anything, though, he begins to speak.
Well, Danny, I must say you've got balls. Most guys would have started to cry or beg me to stop. This will most certainly be fun.
I've had enough of this shit. I started to test my theory. I googled shit like how to track a phone call and how to find cameras in your home. I wanted to see if he could see my screen, and sure enough, confirmation came through.
Oh, Danny, that's cute. You're still trying to fight back. But I can assure you, you will not be able to track this call, and you will not find out how I can see you.
Challenge accepted, dickhead. I angled my phone away from my bag and took out a USB dongle. If this asshole was on my Wi-Fi, I'm gonna make him think he's controlling all of my devices. I looked for my laptop while trying to make as little noise as possible, and again, angling my phone away from what I was doing. I found my laptop, booted it up, and plugged in my dongle. Yeah, well, I'm one tough son of a bitch. So when are we playing, James? And do you go over the rules properly, yeah? I like to whoop your ass playing by your own rules, dipshit. My strategy was to show no fear. In truth, I was terrified. But I knew the instant he smelled fear, he would have total control over me, and I'd fuck up and forget basic stuff, like I had when this shit show first started. My laptop finished booting up. I knew this fucker was using my network somehow. So I decided to hack my own network and see how he got in. Maybe he left something behind.
The rules are simple, Danny. You wanted to play judge, jury, and executioner. We are going to go through your history of White Knight Justice and see just how much of a hero you really are.
Hero, huh? There was a time when I thought I was a hero. Maybe it was when I made that child molester end his own life. I told myself I was a hero because he wouldn't hurt another child. In truth, was this my past coming to haunt me? No time to think about that. It isn't just my life on the line here. Everyone I care about is in danger, and there's no time to be selfish. Ha! Hero. That's cute, James. But I've always known I was the devil, a necessary evil. But sure, let's walk down memory lane. Maybe that will remind you who the fuck you're dealing with. My attempts were bringing up nothing. I managed to break into my own network many times, but I couldn't find a trace of another device. Not a trace of information transfer. Wait. Information transfer. Outgoing and incoming traffic. Fuck, I'm stupid. He can see a stream of my screen, which means I have outgoing traffic somewhere, right? I started monitoring my outgoing traffic. Encrypted, of course, but there was still an address. A server that this information was going through. I find the address of the server and decide to do something extremely stupid. It might sentence myself to prison, or worse, no access to any computer. But I decided that was a small price to pay for the safety of my family.
Well, Danny, watch the screen as the images pop up. Let's roll the tape, ladies and gentlemen.
What a fucking psycho. I don't pay much attention to the tone of his voice as I set up my botnet for a distributed denial of service attack. My hope is that if I bring down the server for a bit, I'll be able to see where the requests are coming in from and track it from there. It's a long shot, but it might work. As I'm doing this, I also stop recording the call. All the while I'm still angling my phone away from what I'm doing. And since he hasn't spoken of it, my theory that the only camera being used is my phone turns out to be correct. I finally feel like I'm making the right moves in this twisted game. I'm just hoping that I'll be the one to say checkmate in the end, though.
Victim number 1, Brock, 16 years old. You destroyed his relationship and got him kicked out of his home. He spent 3 years on the street before overdosing on heroin. That wasn't a nice thing to do, Danny.
A picture of 16-year-old Brock pops up. He died? Fuck. He was an asshole, but he didn't deserve to die. I went too far. Way too far. But I couldn't admit it. Not to this lunatic. I had to somehow show him that I had no heart. Well, life sucks. Survival of the fittest and all that shit. Maybe he should have been more careful about who he messed with. Another disgusting laugh. James is enjoying himself. Should I be? There was no time to dwell on that right now. I put my phone on loudspeaker and placed it on my desk, weary that the front camera may be used, and I kept it well out of sight and put in an earphone into my left ear. Time to tweak around with this recording and unmodulate this voice.
Danny, this isn't going to end up well if you don't show remorse. Now the fun begins. Remember his girlfriend? It's confession time, Danny.
As if it were alive, my PC opened up Skype and auto-signed in. Fuck. I'm so stupid. Was I really that lazy? A number was entered into it, and it starts dialing. What do you want me to do, James? Tell her the online babe was really me, and Brock wasn't a cheating dickhead? What's that going to change? My botnet was ready, and I started my attack on the server address instantly. I then watched my incoming and outgoing traffic closely. All I needed was a hiccup, something that would lead me to James. In that moment, it was like my entire world was grinded to a halt, ending all life as we knew it. All that mattered was the stream of information. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. I could hear the second hand on my watch ticking. There, a clue. I was starting to lose hope. I started working on it, hoping that James did not notice. I'd imagine his connection to my network might have dropped once he realized that I was onto him, but he was too busy trying to guilt-trip me, and he got too cocky. And I guess he didn't notice. My Skype was still ringing. Was she going to pick up? Hello? It was a girl's voice. She sounded kinda cute, actually. Is James trying to hook us up? Wrong time for jokes right now. James then chimed in.
Go on, Danny. Answer her. Tell her your name and what you did to Brock.
I decided to play along. True, he didn't call me from my mom's number, but that doesn't mean he couldn't still hurt her. Liz? It's Daniel Kurt. We went to school together with Brock? There was a pause. I can't imagine how awkward this must have been for her. I didn't have time to care, though. I ran a search on the address, and while that was going on, I continued tweaking the recording. Danny? That loony kid that used to get beaten up all the time? Ah, what a bitch. Hooking up my ass. I had to fight back the urge to shout and educate her ignorant ass on what autism was. Whatever, though. Not my concern. At least breaking this news to her won't be as painful to me as I thought. Yeah, that's me. The loony kid. I laughed, and I could swear I heard James laughing too. Asshole. So listen, I don't suppose you remember Brock Leland? You kinda slept with him at the time? Maybe not the best choice of words. Yeah, I remember him. I heard he died from a drug overdose. Makes me feel horrible for breaking up with him. Why? Fuck. How do I say this? This is a confession. If she takes this to the police, I'm fucking screwed. Fuck any chance I have of getting away with this. I was 16 though. Does that matter? Read somewhere that crimes committed before the age of 18 aren't dealt with anymore. I was just a kid. I needed to stop this madness before he made me call a victim of an attack I committed after I was 18. Yeah, well, it's my fault he did this. He made my life shit when I was at school, so I decided to fight back. He never cheated on you. a really long pause. It gave me enough time to work on the recording. Nothing remotely human yet, and I was still looking for that address. Danny? Her voice was extremely soft. I was expecting something else. An angrier tone would have made sense. Yeah? I know. She knows? What does she mean? Is she connected to James? Or was this going against James's plan? Shit. Is she James? What? How do you know? There was another pause. My search comes up with something. James is definitely in the same country, but I had to narrow it down. Why was this taking so damn long? I heard her take a deep breath. I always knew Brock was faithful. It's why I stuck around. I wanted to leave him because he was just a horrid person. Not to me, but to other people. I mean, look at you, Danny. I'm sure you were bullied by everyone, but Brock kept taking it too far. And it wasn't just you. Other people would be pushed around by him every day, and I was sick of it. Another pause. Is she crying? I can definitely hear her crying. I didn't want to cut in at all. I let her take her time. After a few seconds, she continued. I guess I was looking for a way out, and seeing this girl that Brock was supposedly cheating on me with was my ticket. I didn't know his life would be ruined because of it. I mean, for crying out loud, we were just kids. Her voice had gotten louder. I could tell she was beating herself up about this. I had to comfort her in some way. Liz, it wasn't your fault. You made the wrong choices in life and ultimately couldn't live with them. You were trapped in that relationship. You were under no obligation to continue with him. It wasn't your fault. I did this. I will gladly take the blame. I still gotta ask though. How did you know it was me? She laughs. I guess that was a stupid question. I knew the answer before she said it. I'm not stupid, Danny. I knew that Brock was pissed off with someone who was good with computers, and the only person I could think of was you. I laughed. I didn't care if James was listening. I didn't care if he would blast through the door and shoot me in the head. I laughed at how stupid I really was, but that thought quickly wormed itself into my mind. James was not going to be happy with this outcome. Liz, are you with someone right now? My thoughts were to get her somewhere safe, somewhere James couldn't get to her without causing too much attention. No, I'm out. Line cuts. Liz? Liz! I picked up my phone. What the fuck have you done with her, you twisted dickhead? Silence. There wasn't a single noise. I looked at my phone confused. We were still connected. Where the fuck did he go? This isn't time for a toilet break. Then I heard a sound. He's there. He starts to speak. His voice changed. Not modulated into something else, but his tone.
Homo sapiens are an intriguing species. They never do the things you expect them to.
I hear a sigh. She'll be dealt with soon. Let's continue our trip down memory lane. My God, he's going to kill her. Fuck, I needed to hurry up and find something. Anything. I can't let anyone else die because of me. Another picture shows up. The child molester that I scared the shit out of, and he ended up taking his own life. What sort of justice was James looking for here, if any at all? I start to panic. Why is he making me do all this? Surely he knows I did these attacks, and he has evidence. Why not turn it all over to the police? All the more reason to find this asshole.
Jordan Fisher, age 36. You masqueraded as all the children he'd molested and caused him to take his own life. Now you might think this is an act of heroism, but if so, why haven't you told anyone about your heroic act?
He was mocking me. His continued talk of heroism disgusted me. I needed to find Liz. I needed to alert the police and let them know that she's in danger. And what do you suppose you're doing now, James? Are you a hero to these people? Are you acting out of their revenge? Wake up, shithead. These people are criminals. All I did was rid the world of them. I looked over to my search window. It was narrowing down. Finally getting somewhere. Back to tweaking the voice recording. It felt like I was getting closer to finding out James's real voice. But it wasn't male. It was definitely a female. Well, anything that will tell me more about James will help. One thing is certain. People feel safe under the cover of anonymity. Once you break that illusion, once you burst that bubble, they start to panic. And one thing you can be certain of, people that panic fuck everything up. It's human nature, I guess. James responds.
Justice? I'm not doing this for justice, Danny. I'm playing a game with you. It doesn't seem like you understand what the game is yet. I feel sorry for you. Anyway, let's continue. Fisher had a daughter. Did you know that? She was 15 when her dad took his own life. Tell me, Danny, don't you think she would like to know why her dad died? I mean, it's only fair, right? Time to confess. Oh, I almost forgot. Her name is Sarah. You'll need that when you talk to her.
As before, another number was dialed from my Skype and began to ring. She was 15? I was still 16 at the time. Fuck. How can a child molester have kids? I deprived one of their dad. But he was a monster. What have I done?
Hello? Who's there? Help me.
There was a girl on the other end. Her voice was aching with distress. I could hear an echo. Where was she? And why does she sound like she's in trouble? James began to speak again.
Danny, you better answer her. Who knows what might happen?
Another one of his laughs echoed through my phone speakers. He disturbed me. I guess I had no choice. Sarah? Are you okay? What's going on? I tried my best to check if she was all right first, before confessing my crime.
I don't know. I think I'm okay. I can't feel my legs.
Her breath rate starts to increase.
Who are you? Where am I? Please help me.
What the fuck is going on? Did James kidnap her? The hell kind of twisted game was this? Just calm down, Sarah. Take some deep breaths. Can you look around and tell me what you see? I turned to my phone. James was silent. I wasn't having it. It was time for some answers. Okay, James, what the hell is going on? What have you done with Liz and Sarah? James was quick to respond this time.
10 minutes, Danny. You have 10 minutes. Find them.
I was just as quick to react. Screw trying to find James now. These were innocent lives on the line here. I needed to find them. I needed to trace Sarah's phone. And I had an idea how. Sarah responds before I could do anything.
It's so dark in here. I see a camera stand in front of me. I'm in a chair, but I can't get up. I can't feel my legs. It's so dark here. Oh my God. What's going on?
Damn it. He's probably using a burner phone. Not good to me right now. Tracing it would take ages. Hang on. Sarah is 19. She has to have a smartphone. Listen to me very carefully. I need you to fill your pockets and see if your phone is still on you. I hear a few groans. Whatever James did to her was painful. I guess her legs were broken or something.
Yes, I have my iPhone with me. It's not dead. Should I call the police?
She asked hesitantly. I could tell from her tone she was happy she still had her phone on her.
If she calls the police, she dies instantly. You have to find her yourself.
James snapped. Damn. I didn't intend to rely on the police anyway, but they still would have helped. I needed to find a way to explain to her just how dire the situation was, without making her panic enough to call the police. I don't think James would have been too happy with me telling her the conditions of our game. I had to think quickly. Sarah, there's no need to call the police. I'm Detective Haynes. I've been looking for you as you've been missing for a while. Now I need you to tell me what your iCloud username and password is. I can track your phone that way. I tried to keep my voice as calm as I could. I didn't want to induce panic. She gave me her details and I logged into her iCloud and started looking for her phone. Within a matter of seconds, it shows me the location of her phone. It was about a 5-minute walk from where I live. I got her location, James. Now let her go.
Oh, Danny. I didn't ask you to give her location. I told you to find her. Run, Danny, but take your phone with you. We still have a lot to chat about.
It dawned on me why she was so close, and why he gave me such a long time frame for such an easy task. I had to physically find her. I dropped everything and I ran. Before I left my apartment, I grabbed a small kitchen knife and wrapped it in a towel. I might need it, though I doubt it would do jack shit if a real threat shows itself. I ran to the address as fast as I possibly could. At the time, I rarely exercised, so when I got there, I felt like dying. I saw a large building in front of me, at least 7 stories high. There were no bells to ring, so I banged on the door as hard as I could. No reply. I didn't have time to waste. I tried to find a weak spot in the door. It was old, so that wasn't too hard. But trying to bust down the door, when I struggled to even open a jar of honey, proved challenging. I looked around for something to use. There were a couple of bricks lying around. I instantly grabbed one and threw it at the door, hoping that there wasn't anyone on the other side. The brick just bounced off. I pick it up again and start hitting the hinges of the door. After a few swings, it finally let loose. No time to celebrate. I kept hammering at the door until it finally broke loose. Sarah, are you here? Can you hear me? I ran inside and looked around. There must have been 20 or so rooms in the building. I didn't have time to look through each one. Help, I'm here. Please help me. I ran to the sound of her voice. Sarah, I'm here, I shout. Keep talking to me. I'm coming. Detective? I'm over here. Be careful. There's someone else here. I stopped outside the door the sound was coming from. Is James here? Would he risk exposing his identity like this? I'm running out of time. I took out the small knife and kicked open the door. I stepped into the room, knife raised. Steadying my breath, I looked around the room. It was dark, and I waited for my eyes to adjust. I started to make out a chair with someone in it, and a stand with what I assume was the camera on it, and a figure standing opposite to me, a female figure. I couldn't quite see her face yet. My eyes were taking forever to adjust. I turned to face this figure while glancing at Sarah. Sarah, are you okay? I asked. I needed to make sure she was okay before whatever was about to go down. Yeah, I'm starting to feel my legs again, but I still can't move. There's another girl here, red hair, but she's passed out. She sounds relieved. I guess she thought I was a detective with dashing hair and stunning eyes. I do not envy the disappointment that she was in for. The girl with red hair was probably Liz. So, this was the grand battle, I guess? At least it's almost over. Just as I was about to address the figure, who I could only assume was James, I hear a familiar voice coming from her. Hey, Danny. I froze. That voice. It can't be. No. It's impossible. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. But it also terrified me. Who was the one person I kept no secrets with? Who was the one person that knew everything I had ever done? Who was the one person that had access to my PC, apartment, phone, everything I ever owned? Who was the one person I shared my heart with? Angela. I whispered softly. The thought that my girlfriend had done this crushed me. I felt tears rolling down my face. Of course, it all made sense. She had her address spoofed as my own because she knew what it was. She added James to my Facebook because she had my login details for Facebook, and I shared everything with her. The thought of her doing this never crossed my mind. Why are you doing this? What are you doing? I don't understand. What did I ever do to you? I can barely string together a sentence. My eyes started to adjust and I saw her. Angela. Is she crying as well? Or am I hallucinating? No, those were definitely tears. Is she really James? Or did James threaten her to do this? Ta-da! She sings through tears. Did you enjoy our little game? At this point, I'm angry, confused, and tired. Why? I scream. Why are you doing this? Why are you hurting innocent people? Why are you hurting me? I've only ever loved you and cared for you. Why? She laughs. Her laugh is fake, I can tell, but she still laughs. Why? She says in a mocking tone. Don't you know why your lovely girlfriend is doing this? Danny, did you not find it odd that I didn't introduce you to my parents ever? I did find that odd. She was always reluctant on telling me who her parents were, but I didn't mind. I loved her. I didn't really care about her parents. What's that got to do with anything? As I'm searching for answers, it hits me. Her dad must have been the victim of one of my attacks, and I confessed it all to her. But still, if she was a victim to an attack from me, he must have been a criminal. Why was she doing this? Oh, it seems like you understand. My dad was David Jessington. You know, the drug dealer you put behind bars. I loved you, Danny. I still do. But when my dad was arrested, he made me swear to make whoever did this to him pay. I tried and looked for whoever did it, but after a year I gave up. Then I met you and fell in love. I thought we could live our lives forever together. Then you had to tell me that you wanted there to be no secrets between us. You had to tell me everything you've ever done, including getting my dad arrested. She took a breath, wipes her tears, and continues. I spent weeks fighting with myself internally. I tried to forget that I was in love with the man responsible for me not being able to see my father. I tried, but I couldn't. Eventually I went and visited my dad. I asked him if I still had to make the one who did this to him pay, even if it was someone I loved deeply. I pleaded with him to forgive me, but he looked at me and told me that if I had the power to avenge him and didn't, he would disown me as his daughter and never forgive me. Her tears returned. Danny, I love you. I always will. But I swore to my dad, and if he ever finds out that I let you go, he would kill me. I wanted more than anything just to go to her and hug her, to tell her that it would be okay. I dropped the knife, and I started to walk towards her. I didn't care if she killed me. I didn't care if the whole world was against me. I loved her, but she kept crying and raised her knife towards me. Danny, stop. Please stop. I don't want to do this. I can't let you get close to me again. Please, Danny, stop. She pleaded, but I didn't care. I kept walking. She realized that I didn't care if I died, so she raised the knife to her neck. I stopped and stared at her eyes. Please, Danny, I don't want to hurt anymore. I ran to her. Just as she was about to drive the knife into her neck, I held the blade with my bare hand. Blood starts dripping down, but I didn't care. I stared into her eyes and softly whisper, I love you, Angela. I don't care who your dad is. She then breaks down and drops the knife as I lean in to kiss her. I hear sirens in the background. Someone must have seen me breaking into the building and alerted the police, but I didn't care. What happened next was a blur. First it was the police, then it was the ambulance. Angela and I were arrested, but thanks to the witness reports by Liz and Sarah, I was released immediately. I attended Angela's hearing, and she looked happy to see me there. Her sentence wasn't too long, less than her father's. I didn't care though. I promised that I would fight with her until the very end, and I meant every word. I kept visiting her, every time I got the chance. When she comes out, we will move away. I'm working hard, taking every shift I can, earning every penny I can. I will never take justice into my own hands again, because even though I may have helped someone, I have also hurt others. And maybe they deserved it. Maybe what I did was right, but I am not justice, and I have no right to claim to be. I have made mistakes in my past, and maybe James was my justice. For now, though, I know I have to do what I must do, and I have my heart set on the path that I've chosen. Maybe there is no place far enough for us to run where her father can't find us. My fight isn't over. It has only just begun.